Welcome back, Smite fans, to Week 7 of the SPL for a matchup that a few weeks ago may have looked completely lopsided and one that we can just kind of brush over. Obey versus Radiance. Goremizer is with me, myself, Dolson, to talk about it. And Gore, what has changed so much here? Maybe it's an obvious question that maybe makes this Obey versus Radiance set a little bit more interesting.
Well, it's, the easy out is, hey, Obey got a new jungler and got their first win. They even, though, they lost yesterday, looked good against the Knights. So there's a lot going for Obey. And, you have to look at it this way. Most teams that made roster changes now have had 6 weeks of prep to be able to work with that and know that change. Obey is on, week 2 now, and they've made this much progress, so keep your eyes on them. But the other side of that is the Radiance coin, and, well, that is the fact that they have just been losing, Dave. It has been kind of bad for them these last couple of matches. Yeah, it's not exactly where you want to find yourself if you're on a losing streak, but now against kind of the new hotness in the SPL, if you lose this one, it might be more of a punch to the ego than anything.
Well, let's talk Obey, and obviously the name being thrown around the most is Cyno, for good reason. It's the roster swap that was made. Got Obey not only their first map win last week, but their first set win. They come in yesterday up against the Knights. They do lose, but it's in 3, so they get another map win. And it's these small improvements that continue building up. And I like what Aggro said, talking about Obey yesterday, where getting a win is best case scenario for this new roster, but realistically, it's going to take some build-up time. They've got some kinks to work out, so the fact that they're able to get a win this early on is great for them. But Cyno has elevated this team, if not mechanically, at least coordinationally. There's more team coordination now with Cyno that has really brought Obey up a notch.
It's the same conversation we were having when they went into that match against Sanguine, which is to say that it's not something you're supposed to look at and think, yes, this is going to change things overnight. Of course, we all then immediately had to eat our words because they won that set when we said that, but it's not supposed to be this instant gratification. Yes, Obey is going to start winning now. But pushing games and to 3 like they did against the Knights, potentially like they can do today to Radiance, them getting a loss, you don't look at that as that bad because, they just made a roster change. They weren't doing that well beforehand. It's going to take some time to build that back up. But every win not only bolsters them, but it also showcases how close now the top and the bottom of the league have gotten.
And I think it is a curious topic to talk about with Obey, where I think a lot of people, when discussing this team, have kind of said, it's never been like a nitty-gritty mechanical issue where these guys are bad players. It's just been kind of decision-making. Is that a mindset you maybe subscribe to, and that's why this Cyno change has seemed to work out?
Honestly, whenever we're in the Pro League, that tends to be where the issues lie, right? It's never that mechanically we've seen players be bad. In fact, we have seen that several times from players that people would write off. You put them onto a different team, and all of a sudden they're the talk of the town. They're the star player. It does come down to personality. I mean, we had some of that discussion earlier with genetics. It comes down to how not only they mesh with the rest of the team, but where the shot calling is, where their comfort zone is in terms of the gods they're playing. There's so many little factors that go into the equation of how do you win, that it's easy to glance over one of them, and they're all equally important. But I think Obey have had some time to iron a little bit of it out, and so while they're still working on some of it, this is the heat check more than anything. Radiance are on a losing streak. Obey, they could maybe pick up the scraps and turn this into a huge win.
That's a great segue now into Radiance replays you see rolling on the side there. A team that started off 4-0 in the first couple of weeks of the league and have since lost 4 of the last 5. The big question, Goremizer, maybe around this Radiance team is it a Radiance-specific issue, or do you think that the rest of the league has started to catch up skill level-wise, maybe figure out some of those tendencies?
I definitely think it's more column B than it is column A, right? Probably like 90-10 in terms of where it is. Radiance maybe have some issues coming down to it, but realistically, Rival was trying to get used to roster changes. Obey have now made their roster changes. The team that was the biggest threat to Radiance early on was Sanguine, a team that's been playing together for so long. The Knights, who are still trying to figure out how to do those late-game plays. Radiance right now are threatened because everyone else has just stepped up to the level they were at, and unfortunately, they haven't been stepping with them.
Right, and remember one of the early conversations we had around Radiance was they've got a lot of personalities to mesh, and not necessarily the ego talk, but just different play styles, and best case scenario is starting off 4-0, so now maybe starting to hit some of those speed bumps with meshing a new team like that. A big piece in this team, of course, is CycloneSpin. I was able to sit down with him and hear some of what his mindset is and the team's mindset is going up against a newly formed Obey. All right, I'm here with CycloneSpin Hunter for Radiance, talking to him about their matchup against Obey here today. Now, Cyclone, it's been admittedly a close and hard-fought last 5 games for you guys after a 4-0 start to the split. Where does team morale kind of stand after, admittedly a tough last 5 games for you guys?
I think our team morale, we're still there. We're definitely not like upset or anything that we lost or anything. I think we're kind of in a slump, so we're just kind of taking it one game by a time and just like try to improve and get out of the slump that we're in.
Well, that's the absolutely right mindset, I think, to have for you guys, especially with so much talent on that team. And today you're going against Obey, a team that has had a slump throughout the large part of the split here, but they added Sino and were able to get a win off of Sanguine. Do you think that your opponents here today, is that maybe a one-off for them last week, or do you think this is now a team that can start to consistently take some games off you top teams?
I don't really think that was a one-off. I'm pretty sure the addition of Sino helps boost them a lot to make them extremely competitive with everyone else. So there's no longer like the public perception of Obey's not really that good of a team. I'm pretty sure now they're a really good team and compete with literally anyone and can beat anyone in any given day as well.
As far as like prep going into a match against Obey now and specifically Sino, do you think that the boost he maybe provided, and obviously this is a little bit maybe more behind the scenes for them, do you think that changes your in-game prep against them, or is it more of maybe a shot caller, difference maker behind the scenes role for that team?
In my opinion, I think it brings a shot caller difference because Sino is a person that likes to run the game. So he likes to control all parts of the game. So everyone just has to get on board with him. And that really brings a different factor to when I'm playing against Obey compared to having their old jungler weekend.
Right. Well, it absolutely showed in their match against Sanguine. Kind of final thoughts for you. Playing against Wowie and Inbound over there on the long lane, you and Aurora. What are expectations for that lane in your matchup today?
I don't really expect much to happen in dual lane besides us getting ganked maybe, but yeah.
Fair enough.
Be a farm lane.
Hey, and that seems to work out for hunters when you rotate into those fights and have plenty of gold in your back pocket. Expectations for this game, maybe high level, set predictions. Do you think you guys come out with the win?
I think we'll come out with like a hard fought 2-1.
Hey. 2-1 sounds good to the fans at home and sounds good to you guys getting the win. CycloneSpin, thanks for chatting and best of luck.
Thank you.
Hey, obviously there's some respect being paid there, and I echo kind of some of CycloneSpin's thoughts there, where this is now an Obey team. It's not a one-off. They're going to start to take some games. Even in their loss yesterday, they took a game off of the night score. Obvious respect being paid to this team. Even when I ask, what's the vibe? Give me a set prediction. Hard fought 2-1. Could you see that realistically playing out here?
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those things. I mean, maybe you factor in those bottles I saw in the background of CycloneSpin's interview. But, you have to look at those things. The way Radiance play and the way Obey play are pretty similar, at least out of the duo lane. And honestly, the way they work around each other, adapting is going to be one of the big carries. Most kills there for Radiance. And while Wolfie has the mantle of most kills, he's also got way more games than we have out of Sino. So there's something to be said about the way the junglers play, the way the supports play on these teams that I think is going to be a huge impact. And specifically, it's their aggression on both sides.
And I look now either at picks and bans and in-game play. You look at what happened to CycloneSpin against E United, 1-8-1. In Game 1 against E United, and then 2-6-8 in Game 2 against E United. And Gore, I don't know if that's necessarily a Cyclone playing bad mindset rather than an E United repeatedly ganking and putting pressure in that long lane. So obviously something shows with that kind of mindset. Now jumping into picks and bans, though, for Game 1, we've talked about Cyno as a difference maker. In-game, now out-of-game. Mindset and picks and bans. He has started to really forge these warriors in the jungle into some victory. Only playing Thor is kind of the outlier there. Do you think there's a world where, well, now Nike being banned out, teams start to adapt maybe to that mindset?
I think so, and realistically, what we've seen lately in the league, and this is something that I think is maybe the most fascinating, there's so many different approaches to the game right now, you know, and some supports. I see Aurora, I see Inbound, I immediately think, man, Hercules might be huge in this game, right? But then there's also going to be, you know, what is it? The more supporty kind of Guardians. We've seen Khepri, Geb on the rise. Like, there's so many different approaches to the game in terms of supports, in terms of junglers as well. You mentioned Thor, but we see Nike getting banned out because of what we've seen that bring to the table here. I just think it's so... I don't even know the words for it, right? There's so much that is viable that it's hard to lock down what is going to maybe take precedence and kind of shine brightest today.
Hey, those words seem to make sense to me and absolutely ring true here. Let's take the Thor away and with some variability there for Cyno. Aren't necessarily tapping into his god pool that heavily. That does leave open the Camazotz, though. A god that, when picked up, wins about 65% of the games. Radiance maybe seems like the obvious pick here for them first overall.
And not only the obvious pick, I mean, this is worth mentioning. Like, Camazotz is the most banned god in the league right now, at least coming into Week 7 here. But Radiance is the only team that has him in their top 5. They're getting him regularly, and he has a 65% win rate. You put 2 and 2 together, and that almost seems like on its own the math is bad for Obey. So maybe a little bit of a struggle bus to have against that. It's just dealing with his sustain and how much control he brings. There's a lot Camazotz can do to control the backline, very similar to what we saw out of SOT in the last game. If he goes over to that solo lane here for Radiance, I expect to see it bully.
And you figured that Hercules would be prioritized here in picks and bans by either team between Inbound and Aurora. And hey, wouldn't you guess it, Obey are going to snag him up immediately following that Merlin. Remember as well, a lot of what has worked for Obey, even pre-Cyno, was Wolfie in the mid lane, getting these first bloods. Raijin's banned out, tends to immediately go over to that Merlin. So I like what Obey have done here with their first 2 picks. Radiance are going to answer back, though, a Terra and a Jingwei for themselves. Presumably that's the duo lane locked in for Radiance. What do you make of those 2 paired together?
I actually really like it because Terra, she's in this really weird area where she can be that aggressive support that you want over there, allowing Aurora to maybe kind of flex the way he wants to play, but she can also be a little more passive, focused on the healing, focused on keeping your team safe, and because of that flexibility, it's less all-in than that Hercules is, so that gives Radiance a little more chance to react to what Obey are bringing, right? If Inbound happens to go up and pop off on this Hercules, then Aurora has to change his style accordingly. But if this Hercules falls behind even a smidge, Terra can start to press that and force him to fall back.
And now, we've talked a lot about the Camazotz as well. The answer we've seen, actually even specifically from Obey and Ducky in the solo lane, has been Osiris to kind of mitigate a lot of what Camazotz looks to do in the early game. What does that matchup kind of look like in your eyes?
Well, he's got the stun that comes for him, as well as the slow you to death, literally slowing you to death, being able to use his combo with the sickle and slice him down. It will stop Camazotz from running away, forces Bat out of Hell earlier, and then Lord of the Afterlife closes the gap so you can continue chasing him. I think that's the biggest thing. Then you factor in the fact that he's got anti-heal built in with that Lord of the Afterlife, and it stops Camazotz from getting on that sustain train that we've seen keep him alive in so many of these fights, make it so that every solo laner that tends to run him walks away from a fight somehow successfully, even if it was a 1v3.
Now, Gormizer, it was only the Nike banned out prior, but Obey not having locked in their jungler just yet. The Cyno effect in full swing. Obey still need a jungler. Radiance, obviously realizing that, are going to take away Vimana and Erlang Shen, a couple gods that I imagine Cyno would feel very comfortable with. Hell locked in, though, here for Radiance, maybe Akali as well. There's a lot of power in the 5 that Radiance have picked up here for Game 1.
There are not a lot of junglers where I think, man, I need to ban that guy out, and my mind goes to Erlang Shen and Vimana, of all things.
Yeah, right.
But considering what we got to see out of them yesterday, it makes sense to try and control that aspect. But this is me jumping into the realm of possibilities, things that are maybe not that likely, but Hercules, Osiris, I mean, if you're looking to run warriors in the jungle, I guess to an extent even Wukong can work over there, and having 3 of them on Obey, I mean, we were talking about flexibility. This is about as flexible as it gets, I guess.
Quick thoughts, 95% of the fans vote for Radiance in this matchup, 5% over to Obey. We've already discussed that that's maybe a little bit too lopsided, at least for Game 1, Gormizer. Which composition maybe casts your vote?
I agree that it's too lopsided, but I still think it's in the right vein of thought. Radiance, I mean, hell, Kali, if they make past 20 minutes, they are going to be just fine in team fights.
Well, this matchup just got a little bit more interesting over the last few weeks, so let's jump right on into game number 1.
Yeah, it really did, Dave, didn't it? Looking at how this one's played out between the two over the course of the weeks. Hindu Man here, joined by Mifflin for this game, and of course Doug on the 1s and 2s, as my buddy F. would have said. But yeah, I mean, Mifflin, look at these comps. Radiance last 2 weeks struggled. Cyclone even said himself, you know, they were trying to get back to winning ways. They're in a bit of a slump. Does that happen a lot, these slumps? Like, I guess we're starting to see it a little bit more with the Pro League being so tight that teams are obviously slumping here or there.
It's easy to fall into bad habits. Maybe you get a little bit complacent at the top. Radiance got off to an absolutely amazing start this year, and then they start to slowly decline. They start to stagnate a little bit, whereas every other team had to continue proving themselves, so they're going to grow at a quicker rate. I think maybe that's what CycloneSpin's trying to speak to, but yeah, with the draft that they have here, I think that's going to be how you're going to get yourself out of the slump. I mean, this is clear and concise. They're looking to get to the 20-minute mark, as Gormizer pointed out, and if they do it, I don't imagine Obey is going to have much ways to stop all of this aggression, all this healing, all this backline dive potential that Radiance is bringing.
Yeah, it definitely feels like Obey's composition has kind of put them on a clock based off what Radiance have drafted too, right? I mean, 3 warriors in this draft. Sure, their early mid-game going to be very potent, very strong. But if Radiance get to that late stage with a Hell, with a Terror, with a Jingwei, and then a Kali still, like, that's going to cause problems for Obey here. So I really do feel like you could put a clock in the corner and go, hey, if this goes past 35, Radiance should be winning this game.
I said the exact same thing about Obey's last set that they played, that they put them on a timer, but these guys are able to play despite conventional SMITE knowledge. I was right, but despite all of that, they fight into multiple fights in the late game with a completely early game lopsided draft. I'm not willing to count out Obey just because these guys play incredibly well around each other in the team fight phase.
Sure. And I think that's one thing Obey really was missing at the moment. With Sino now joining this team, the real look was who would the shot caller be? And they needed someone to step into that role. Weekend had already said himself that he wasn't willing to play in that role. He didn't want to be the shot caller for the team. And that's why Wolfie and Inbound were the 1-2 shot call. And it just, honestly, it didn't work out. But now they're back in the fray, taking on teams. And this is a big one for both of them in my eyes, with Radiance really struggling the last couple of weeks. You're hoping for them to find some form yet again here. But as Cyclone said himself, he thinks this is going to be a hard-fought 2-1. So we'll see how this one plays. At the moment, though, it's just about farming so far. No real gank potential at the moment. Jungler's just going back to base, at least Sino has, and adapting now at his speed buff on this Kali. Definitely seeing a little bit more Kali as of late, more potency from this coming through. A lot of people starting to realize that she's, well, just really good, as she always has been. She's just better in the meta now.
Right now, the SPL is really leaning itself towards a more late-game meta. We see this out of Sanguine. They've really pioneered that route of, all right, guys, maybe we just wait for that 20-minute mark, group up as 5, and start taking our fights then. And now the entirety of the league, their games are starting to lean towards that longer phase. So I think it makes sense that we're starting to see these more hyper-carry late-game picks. Kali comes to mind. Hell comes to mind. All these guys are going to scale incredibly well into the late game, because they know that they can just wait and farm up and play incredibly safe and force anyone that wants to play in the early game to take disadvantageous fights. Obey's going to have to be forcing fights if they want to take any before that 20-minute mark, because Radiance are going to be completely content just farming up for that late game. I'm looking at Bobby and I'm looking at Sino to see where the aggression is really going to roll out from that Obey roster. And they're going to need to group up and they need to get a huge lead. I think yesterday I said they need 25-minute mark, about a 10k gold lead. The same can truly be said about today, because look at Radiance's draft. Every single one of them, for the most part, compared to their direct lane counterparts, they're going to scale all much better into the late game.
Sure, I mean, these 3 warriors that Obey have drafted too, sure, they're going to be tanky blocks, but I think we can see a bit of itemization from Radiance towards, you know, some health. chipping away at, such as Soul Reaver, such as Chins, which are pretty common in the builds for the most part here between the teams at the moment. Although, when I look at anti-heal that Obey can draft here, it's going to be a little bit awkward, I would say. Wolfie obviously going to have to go for a Divine Ruin, I expect. They're going to rely on Ducky a little bit with the anti-heal that comes with Osiris and that Lord of the Afterlife ultimate. But outside of that, it's kind of awkward to fit a Brawlers into the build for a lot of these warriors, you know? Just wonder where they're going to find that extra anti-heal from, or whether they invest into that Cursed Onk maybe a little bit later.
My eyes are 100% leaning towards that Cursed Onk. You want to shut down Callie's reset on her ultimate. You want to shut down the healing from BMT. You really want to do it all in one burst. If Obey want to take a 5-on-5 fight, they're going to have to win the engagement immediately. They can't let Radiance back up at all, so you want to shut down all that healing as quickly as possible. Onk's the best way to go about it. Sure, you can get the Brawler's Beat Stick on side of Sun Wukong, but even then he's going to have a harder time applying.
Ducky getting aggressive around this blue buff and actually does force Adaptin and Benji away. Benji, however, though, did get that blue buff. Adaptin had already secured it before Ducky got in the pit there. But first bit of action there over on the right-hand side. There's a bit of aggression with this Osiris in the early game coming through. Not always easy with Osiris against Camazotz because Kama's lane clear is pretty potent too. But that little bit of a window for Ducky there early on is just making sure to keep a bit of pressure on the map. Looking at the ward placements, though, Obey's ward's very deep in enemy territory, all along that line where you look to keep see the jungler rotate into the lanes. Whereas when you look at Radiance, they've got very defensive wards, and that kind of, I guess, myth plays into the idea of Radiance just want to farm and don't get picked early.
They're going to be the complete beneficiaries of a zero conflict game. So far, Benji getting poked out constantly. That's how you'd expect this lane to go until Camazotz gets some of that power online, get some of that defensive positioning, get some of that sustain online.
Right, boys.
If you want to gank them, now's the time.
And they're going to use the clone to do just that. The clone going to tank up the tower from nice little leap, though, out of Benji to buy some time. Knockups do cause some problems for him, though. But the tanking is done. He might die to that tower shot at the end. No, Ducky got credit for it. And now a Raw, though, rotating in to pick up the pieces. Beautiful route on the second dash, though. Pins Ducky in place. Inbound's there to peel away the Carly. But Adapting says no to that idea. Back in the fray again. Boulder off to double tap. But a Raw gets himself a double kill on this Terror. And Inbound could really only watch on. Nice idea from Obey there, Myth. It just cost him a bit too much.
The comms are almost certainly, Ducky, I got the ultimate down on Benji. Go, 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 go. Sino says, okay, let's do it. But it seems like Radiance was just a little bit ahead of the ball there. They get the counter rotation in quickly, and Inbound a little bit lagging on his rotation. Finds the pluck off and might be able to peel off, but does miss the driving strike. And from there, the engagement's truly over. Radiance just get the better end of it. They get the clean disengage afterward. That's clean play, but still, Obey trying to force these engagements in the early is exactly what they have to do. They need to establish a lead early on.
Well, trying to get this blue buff for the moment, Obey, but denied again thanks to a nice little shot from Adapting there to secure that for Benji once again. But you're starting to see a bit of a lead develop in mid ever so slightly. Wolfie's getting a little bit more experience over Big Man Tings at the moment. And that is mainly because I'm seeing Bobby and we're seeing a little bit more sign up to this right-hand side of the map. So it's freeing Wolfie up to get a bit more free farm on his own. I say that as Inbound soaks up that to hit level 7 here. We'll just see how this one continues because the focus has been on solo. Nice little combo out there from Inbound, but the problem is it was even better from Aurora who set up the turnaround play. Big Man's going to go down as Sino finally gets into the fray though with that blink, and Wolfie's a little bit far forward and Adapting, recognizing that. Aurora gets another double kill? Oh my goodness me. I mean, I think there's a time and place when Adapting would have been very upset about that, but Aurora's got 4 kills, all 4, with a Terror so far. That's insane.
That's just a little bit unlucky. Terra ultimate confirming that last kill. I'm sure Adapting would have very much preferred to get it himself. Get that Kali online a little bit more quickly, but now Terra 4-0. She's going to get that tankiness online, go for some of that utility inside of the Lotus Crown, get some power online incredibly early on as well. So now you're worried about how much damage is Aurora able to do. He's able to do a ton, and using that Lotus Crown with his ultimate means that any team fight that Radiance take, despite having this early game deficit, despite because of Obey's early game focus in their comp, they can still fight into it with that additional defense from the passive. Radiance getting all 4 kills on Aurora, almost never going to be ideal, but I'm sure they're not too concerned about it.
Yeah, Lotus Crown, definitely something I've said again, and it has grown on me over the years in terms of a support role, especially with dot damage. But here's a little look back at that fight again and how Aurora got that double kill. The first little play there just to find the root, and then the secondary one, well, I don't think it was intentional here, but he's just looking to help out his boy, pops the old man. I think it's a fist to the face, I want to say. Wait, what? I'm not sure what
Yep,
that was.
just
It
the
might have been
ultimate.
just tick damage. Okay.
100%.
There you
When
have
the
it.
ultimate from Terra applies, if someone else does damage with abilities, it's going to trigger a burst of damage or burst of healing if it hits one of your allies, and that's what confirms the kill for Aurora there. Just
OP.
truly unfortunate. It really is. Adapting would have made so much better use of that gold because jungler
Definitely.
Big Brain wants to get online a little bit earlier on. Aurora, he's going to be able to fight just fine despite it. Now he has a level lead for himself, which only one level, 4-0, not too big of a lead. He's going to get that Thebes online a little bit later if he decides to go for it. Bobby already almost done building his.
Speaking of builds as well, Chin's now online for Adapting. It's one of the reasons we mentioned Aurora getting a couple of those kills, because it would have just given a bit more gold to fill those coffers and get this online a second or two earlier. But this is an item I expect to be very useful in this match against 3 warriors. If they build healthy, you're going to chip away that health. Although, when you check in with the build so far, it's pretty much focused on penetration or damage. Sido going the damage route, the Brawlers and Talaria, whereas Ducky going for, well, classic Glad Shield, and looks like Breastplate of Valor more than likely next on that list. So far, though, gold is relatively even. The only real thing separating the two in gold is that First Blood bounty that Sino picked up so far this game. And Experience, on the other hand, marginally the same. With Obey, just lately though, they've always been solid in the early game. They've always looked pretty good in the early game. It's when we get to this point where they've struggled. So I wonder what they're going to look for next.
Almost certainly going to be a fight. I mean, just look at Obey's comp. Sino on Wukong, Bobby on this Hercules. If they're looking for anything, it's going to be objective after the engagement. They want to pick out BMT early on, make sure that this hell can't get any sort of utility or tankiness online. Abuser in the early game, that's been the age-old strategy. And from there, look for the objectives and push on your lead. Right now, they've got a slight gold lead, about 500 in favor of Obey. And that's just from playing the map incredibly well. They're farming up very efficiently. They're sharing their farm very efficiently. Radiance 4-2 right now. They also got First Blood for themselves. Obey shouldn't be this far ahead. 500 gold, not that far at all, though. They need to push it even further. 11 minutes. Time is ticking on. BMT's already got his second active online. Obey's got a clock that they have to work with.
Yeah, I think it's just a little bit trickier for their liking, honestly. But Invade on the right-hand side again from Ducky coming out here. Can't secure the blue again, but now he's overextended. Ultimate on cooldown, Adapting, trying to rotate in. And a nice little Jingu bang out of Sino there. Just hitting onto Adapting to prevent a blink opportunity that was available for Adapting to get aggressive. He would have liked to have held onto that leap, so gank potential wastes away for the moment there. In terms of builds though, Brawlers beat Stick online, Divine Ruin online, Sino and Wolfie respectively. So a bit of anti-heal is going to be in the mix as this one continues on. But I do think you're right. I think, you know, you were saying you will wait to see a little bit more of a lead from Obey early on. I think the pressure, the counter ganks more than anything else from Radiance have just slowed down that pressure quite a lot. And Obey have just had to fall back to continue to farm and wait for a window now.
Their window will quickly close by. Yes, you do have Radiance playing incredibly well around these counter rotations, but Obey has to be cognizant of that. They have to know that Radiance isn't going to just roll over and let them draft this early game and then win it that easily. They're going to have to do something here. They have to win out in the early game because they know that they're not going to scale incredibly well. Right now, anti-heal already online. Can you tell who they're worried about? It's BMT. Now's the time to start oppressing him, try to put the pressure on, try and fight out. If they allow this game to stagnate as it has been for the last 4 minutes, BMT and Adapting are both going to come online.
Bit of a window for a gank on the right-hand side, but instead of a gank, they're going to try and take down this tier 1 tower. It will open up the lane a little bit more and maybe release Ducky for some more rotations. Osiris not bad up against a Collie either. And I think that's an awkward thing for Ducky on this Osiris is he's kind of got 2 targets, right? You can full anti-heal one, but hold that fort. Benji under pressure again, low on mana, but still has his ultimate. Good forced opportunity from inbound, but it did cost him a blink for doing that.
This continuous pressure onto that solo side of the map, if they continue doing this, Obey that is, Radiance could very easily respond and just rotate over to the Gold Fury and try and blow that up instantly. Obey's been doing a good job of invading this blue buff, but it's very low returns, and it's opening up that left side of the map for either ganks onto this Hachimon, who's a lot less safe than Jingwei, or the only neutral objective over there being the Gold Fury. Obey's got good fight potential, but if they keep taking fights outside of the realm of relevance on that left side of the map, Radiance can very easily just exploit that pressure.
Yeah, I think the pressure they've exuded on the right, though, so far has paid some sort of benefit to them. Let's just see if they can start to transition that now. elsewhere. Red buff now for Wolfie in the mid lane. He's going to return back to base and continue working on more pen, which is what we were talking with aggro yesterday. Is kind of the cookie cutter build now for the mid laners. Just some flat pen early on, but a cooldown reduction in it. Although checking in with big man Tings, looks like we're going to see a breastplate of valor here, which is quite not. It's unsurprising to me when you play in the hell. If you're going to feel you're going to get focused on, and there's a lot of physical, and in this game there's 4 physicals. Doesn't surprise me to see him looking for this breastplate of valor to make sure he stays alive.
Yeah, the additional CDR is also going to help him out, make sure they can keep that healing rolling out. When there's 3 warriors on the enemy team and you're playing Hell, you absolutely know who's got your number. It's Cynosure, it's Ducky, it's Bobby on this Hercules. That's who's going to be diving onto this Hell. Early Breastplate of Valor, I love the pickup. It means that he's going to get the healing online more often. He's going to be able to use that Dark Stance more often as well. I like it all.
Well, 40 minutes in, Obey are going to start up the Gold Fury. The first little look in that direction. Inbound on zone duty, lost half his health there. And it's going to be very important about the health management. Here's a blinking from Aurora. Boulder thrown out early, mistimed, funny enough, to try and secure it. Even though backside big man Tings under pressure from both Ducky and Cyno, who were all in him. But the protections are coming up pretty big for him so far. Benji, on the other hand, tries to get to the backside of this fight and ends up getting whittled down within an inch of his life. Adapting does at least get hold of Hachiman at the tail end and take out Wowie, but it's a trade out for Wolfie. 2 for 1 in favor of Obey. And this is the power of the Warriors at this stage. They run down Radiance and did exactly what they needed to. Benji exits to the right hand side again, and Obey secure a very good Gold Fury.
Obey played that incredibly well. They pull the gold 3, force Radiance to respond with aggression, and the second that Aurora blinks in to find his ultimate, all 3 warriors on the side of Obey say, all right, it's my time to go in, and immediately dive onto BMT. The damage was a little bit low. They weren't able to confirm him very early on. Had they killed him a little bit more quickly, that fight goes a lot better. They would have been able to peel off and deal their damage elsewhere, but Radiance was very slow to responding to that dive. After Aurora blinks in, he's really the only one that tries to back up and help out BMT, but at that point, he's already at quarter health, and BMT's already dead. So it's just 2 clean pickups for Obey. Now 2,000 gold to the lead, about 16 minutes in. It's not exactly where you'd want them to be with the draft that they have, but they're taking strides in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I was interested in how these engagements worked out is Obey's composition doesn't have a ton of hard CC. And I was really worried about how they're going to lock down a character and burst them through. But it seems to be the plan is that Cyno and Ducky are going to be the divers to the backline, and Inbound's going to sit back and look to peel a little bit for the carry. Seems to be the game plan around objectives. That makes a lot of sense to me. You know, the likes you've got the Sun Wukong and the Osiris that can both get in and out of combat or reposition effectively and take a ton of damage. They're pretty good at diving in with that combination of abilities there, even though they do lack a little bit of hard CT. Sure, they've got slows, but that's really about it outside of the, the driving strikes from the likes of Hercules.
Can't sleep on that Tiger form either. That's a pretty nice
come
stun.
on.
They got the
No,
slow follow-up. They've got
no.
pulls from Hercules.
Tiger sucks. Tiger sucks, dude. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Tiger stance. I think it's so easy to juke it out. It's like rollout, on Gab. You can just roll around it. It's pretty easy to miss that ability or hit a minion or something like that. It's not as easy to connect with that, and you invest in it before you get the CC. That's kind of how I look at Tiger, I guess.
That's fair enough. I mean, if he decides to dive in first, find the slow with Master's Will, and then follow up with Tiger Stun, not much you can do from that point-blank range, but I see what you're saying. Obey doesn't have very confirmable CC. The only thing else that really stands out is Ducky's stun. You gotta really stand in that for a literal metric year before that one triggers as well. So they're going to have a hard time locking down a target immediately, but their burst potential is incredibly high, especially considering Cyno's build right now. That early Erendite pickup, that's 75 power, get some cooldown. The ultimate's going to make it a little bit easier for him to chase down his targets if BMT slips away a little bit too far. They have dive and spades. I'm not concerned about whether or not they can kill someone. I'm worried about where Obey goes after that initial kill. How do they fight after they've expended all these resources trying to blow up BMT?
Well, at the moment, what they're doing is putting the pressure on around the objectives. They've taken the Gold Fury, they found a window at the Pyromancer, and that's the power of having a Merlin on your team too, Merlin's really good at objective shred, and they try to force fights around the objectives, which I think is a good game plan from Obey. Force Radiance into a spot they don't necessarily want to be in, but they have to go to, otherwise they're giving up more and more of the lead.
They do. Right now, they have no more neutral objectives left on the map. They don't really have insane dive potential to go into towers right now. Their lead isn't sizable enough that they really feel comfortable diving, or at least I don't feel comfortable saying that they should dive. They need to just wait out, try and force some more engagements, maybe even look to focus out Ducky as they have been.
Little pause coming out between these two teams for the time being here. Did see 2 cursed onks picked up in that game as well. Ducky's got one and Inbound has got one, as well as the Divine Ruin, the Brawler's Beatstick. They've definitely focused on anti-heal this game. And if you actually think about this, the fact that Ducky and Inbound both have them, and how we saw that Gold Fury fight, Myth, they are in different points of the fight, right? One backline, one frontline. So they should be pretty good at nullifying a lot of this sustain that's going to come through from this composition.
And we've seen from Obey in many of their team fights where they like to trade positions in the middle. They'll send 2 warriors in to dive, then one will tag out, give a little high five on the way in, send the next guy in. Well, the next guy's also got Onk. Your healing's not going to be meaning anything to the rest of Obey for that time. I like it. They have to continually focus out BMT in these fights. Might as well dedicate more of your relic slots to being able to do that. But again, that still plays into my one concern from Obey. If they dedicate all that time and all those resources towards one character, they still have to contend with CycloneSpin. He's already level 19. Adapting's coming online incredibly quickly. He's already got Kin Size and Hastened online. He's going to be able to dive incredibly well and easily. And with everyone diving on the side of Obey, who's peeling out for Wolfie?
That's fair, and I think the difference is that Inbound's on peel duty from what we saw that Gold Fury. I just want to see if he sticks to that sort of role there. Nice little Earthbreaker there, want to adapt in. No follow-up available, though, from Worry, who was rotating around the corner. Both these Hunters, by the way, with the action so far, are level 19. They've both gone unchecked, and that could become a bit more of an issue as they've both built into crit options here. Interesting to see Cyclone going for the crit, but he is playing Jingwei, which is natural. But against these sort of tankier targets he's going to be up against, and these 3 warriors, a bit surprising. Sino though, blinking in, getting aggressive with the knockup. Nice Earthbreaker driving strike attempted onto Big Man Tings. Beads would burn, and that's opened up a bit of a window for Obey in this mid lane to take down a tier 1 tower. Radiance looking to answer back though, we're all blinking on in towards Ducky, looking for some pressure where possible. Didn't really find anything he was after that ultimate was used by Aurora, and the pressure has been relieved. Obey come in, they take out the tower, and they get out unscathed.
That's the closest thing to a drive-by that SMITE can do. They create space within that tier 2, immediately take out the tier 1, and then the entire team disengages cleanly. We see Aurora tries his best to see if he can maybe catch out a little straggler, uses his ultimate, but wasn't quite enough, doesn't find the CC, so Obey reset incredibly well, and now they're healthy for this Gold Fury defense.
Yeah, Obey kind of fell back a little bit deep there. It's giving Radiance a bit of a window. Inbound blinking in, looking for the Earthbreaker, but instead finds a driving strike onto Benji, who turns his attention to Wolfie. Meanwhile, Wowie under a lot of pressure. The backside is adapted, jumps in on Wolfie too. Benji swooping across the map as the boulder comes through. Adapting low on health, but he can't get a reset just yet. Yes, he can! Just in time onto Wolfie. Wowie's crit with the driving strike, though, takes out Adapting and trade. It's jungler for mid laner, and Radiance turn tail to start to heal up again. Meanwhile, Obey, different story. They're on the Primal Fury. Aurora's trying to deal with the front line in Ducky, but Ducky does a good job of duking out some aggro. Benji back in the frame. Big Man takes low on mana, and the Primal Fury is already dead. Sino's path in there could have been awkward, but in bird form, he'll get away back towards his team. Benji's still going to give some chase here, but I don't think they're going to find much more unless Inbound paths terribly.
It's not often that I'll say that trading out your mid laner is going to be valuable there, but for the core of what Obey is trying to do in these team fights, losing out on Wolfie in exchange for adapting is kind of value. You still have that dive-centric focus from your 3 warriors, and they can continue to do that without Wolfie. They can continue spearheading their way into the composition. We see that they're able to take the fight on the tail end. It's clean play. Generally, you don't want to lose out on anyone, but if it has to be someone right there, Wolfie falling is absolutely fine. Wowie's got enough crit inside of his build to just blow up the objective on his own. They don't really need that burn potential to go for Gold Fury. Radiance find the key target, but they couldn't quite peel out Adapting on the tail end of it because of a fantastic CC chain from Inbound. It's truly unfortunate for Radiance. They get through the early game relatively unscathed, but now they're kind of falling apart in this team fight phase.
Yeah, Radiance really struggling a little bit on who's on engage, I would say, because they are relying on, and I think we've seen it a couple of times here, Myth, right? They're relying on a raw blink engage and on Terror. Because if you look at the composition that actually Radiance have drafted here, we've not really touched on that. Their engage potential is very lackluster, I want to say. It's a raw with the walls or a blink initiation. What are you going to do? Have Benji or Adapted engage these fights? I don't think so. And I don't think you really want Hell on the front line trying to cause aggro either. This is an awkward composition, and very much a counter initiation, I want to say, off composition that Radiance have got online.
Maybe they draft it knowing exactly what Obey is going for, but because Radiance isn't the first one onto the objective, that means that they're going to be the ones who have to go in and play that offensive role. Because Obey gets a Gold Fury first and they pull it, that means Radiance are going to have to find a way in. That's not what their draft is really relegated for. Now it kind of falls apart around it. If Aurora maybe decides to look for his route before blinking in with the ultimate so that Obey doesn't have time to really split up and make sure that he can't find the follow-up CC, that might be a better way in. Right now, it really is adapting. First and foremost, the first one in, the first one dead, the only one finding a kill in that last engagement either. And that's not how you want to use your Kali. You want her coming into the fight a little bit after how it starts, get her coming in from the side, picking off people after they use their mobility abilities or something like that. But instead, he's the only one that can get in safely with his Death Immune ultimate.
Yeah, I think we did see that on that little fight where they did manage to kill Wolfie. They forced Wolfie's flicker, and as soon as that happened, Adaption initiated, but there were still relics available and enough members around to support him. Pyromancer, though, the way of Obey Alliance again. And as we look through Radiance here, I mean, I also going to keep an eye on what Obey have drafted, but like Radiance, they're all sustaining. They've all gone for healing compositions. Camazotz relies on some sustain, adapting to on this Carly with the ultimate. Big Man Ting's obviously with a Hell. So it's allowing Obey to just go, hey guys, let's all invest in anti-heal in some form or another, and this should make it tricky for every single one of these gods to really stay in action and feel as useful as they want to be. Tricky times, and even a contagion coming out now from Ducky in that solo lane to make sure he's got a little bit more anti-heal online.
You really can't go wrong with anti-heal against Radiance's draft. We forgot to bring up Aurora's healing as well. The tick heal on the 3, not a huge deal, but the burst heal on his ultimate, that's going to be a huge deal in these team fights. That's why you're seeing multiple onks coming out. Right now, Bobby under some duress, gets aggressed on, has to use his blink defensively. Radiance positioning aggressively around this Fire Giant, I like it. It means that that's going to force Obey to walk into them.
Yeah, they're trying to use numbers here, Mifflin is the answer, but the blink for blink exchange between Inbound and Adaption, I feel, definitely favors Inbound for now. Cyno getting a very good flank as Radiance get aggressive for that tier 1 tower. The knockup gets cancelled out by a beautiful stun from Adapting, but he can't save CycloneSpin potentially here. CycloneSpin forced to use the ultimate defensively. Adapting's running for his life too. Ducky and Cyno on the chase down. Cyno doesn't really care too much as he continues to whittle away. The clone doing great work as Wolfie on the backside takes out Benji and picks up a double kill, and the only man left alive is Big Man Tings. That was Radiance using a 4v5 advantage for a tier 1 myth, but as soon as Cyno rotates in, it turns around and they get cut down in their tracks.
It was a sloppy engagement from Radiance. BMT and CycloneSpin immediately forced out. They start to back up, but Benji, Adapting, and Aurora weren't willing to give up any space, so there's 2 fights happening, and Obey went out on both of them and get the Fire Giant on the tail end of it. Again, this is what I said yesterday. Conventional Smite knowledge be gone when Obey's playing. They're going to draft for the early and then fight in the mid to late and just win it anyway. And it's just because they're able to split up the fight from Radiance. It's a fantastic itemization from the squad to deal with all of the healing. Radiance put all of their eggs in one basket, and it's sustained team fights. They're looking for healing from Aurora, from BMT, Adapting, and Benji all make fantastic use of sustain. Not going to be able to do that when there's Pestilence, Brawler's Beatstick, 2 onks. All of these anti-heal options online is going to be able to mitigate every single piece that Radiance has.
Really tricky then, but Obey, good looks for them so far. Bouncing back in the league, this pickup of Cyno seems to have revitalized them. And even Cyno admitted this is a competitive team they're up against today. Cyno even said in the interview he felt like this was going to be a hard-fought 2-1. And at the moment, game 1's looking okay for Obey. Still think they're on a clock though, Myth, you know? I do see that Radiance are struggling here. I do see they're having a hard time taking on Obey, but I still think there's a bit of a clock involved if they don't do well on some of these sieges now. If you're Radiance though, do you look to defend tier 2s, or are we looking at Phoenixes against this Fire Giant?
Radiance has some leeway on their defense. Normally, I would say 8,000 gold on the lead. They've got the XP lead, Obey Alliance as well. Maybe just group up and defend around the Phoenix. But Radiance's anti-engagement comp is so strong. Now that they have the defense, they know where Obey is going to go. They force that game to simplify once they're on these tier 2 towers. Now Aurora's going to get a lot more value out of his ultimate. BMT is going to get a little more value as well, as the rest of his team's going to be fighting around him. Now that it's going to simplify around that, Obey's Alliance is be able to dive and split up the fight. That's not going to happen when everyone's grouped up around this one central objective. So I think if Radiance decide to, they should go for a soft defense in these T2s, try and slow them down, poke the bear a little bit, see if maybe they can get a pick. If it goes poorly, fall back. But from there, they shouldn't go too poorly. Obey Alliance engages, Aurora drops his ultimate, BMT throws out some damage, maybe Adapting dives into the backline. It should go pretty textbook for a counter engage.
What Radiance just did there is push out every single lane where they could. They're trying to push and keep the pressure elsewhere, so it makes it very easy to channel Obey into one lane. Left-hand side's fine, mid is fine. Tier 2 tower on the right will be surrendered. It's going to take a bit of time without those minions, but now the minions have arrived, this Tier 2 will fall. Looks like we've seen a bit of a cheeky attempt from Cyclone on this left-hand side for a Tier 2 tower too. And I do like that idea, because with Jingwei you can always get back with that passive back in the fray if needed. But now that everyone's missing on the map, it's an immediate recall coming out from CycloneSpin there. Now onto the mid lane we go for Obey then, as we wait for the next bit of action. Doesn't like you said, it's going to be around Phoenix's, although Radiant's starting to group around this Tier 2 tower.
I like the play. They know that Cynosure is forced to back there. Obey can't take that siege 5 versus 4, so they have to wait for Cyno to re-rotate towards the middle of the map. And now, Radiance has the defensive positioning. They're 5-man stacked. They've got jungle pressure as well, as they're able to come in from the side of the fight. They should be able to defend this, but even then, with the huge gold deficit, with the XP deficit as it is, and all the actives available on the side of Obey, Radiance is going to have to play incredibly adeptly to stop this siege.
Yeah, I'm just not so sure how much Obey can get with the end of this Fire Giant. It's only got another 40 seconds left on this first FG book they got. Tier 2 tower falls in mid, so all in all, after the engagement where they catch Radiance on the right-hand side, they take the Fire Giant, they get a Tier 2 tower in right, a Tier 2 in mid, and a Tier 1 on the left-hand side. That's all she wrote. Obey will have to just accept the Pyromancer and then look for the next FG play. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea if you're Obey here. Play around the objectives again, right, Myth? I mean, they've done a really good job around them so far. They've pretty much dominated every Fury spawn in the game, and the same can be said for FGs.
They're getting the better end of sloppy engagements. Just take a peek at the slash line. Radiance has 7 kills, Obey has 9. Radiance isn't fighting poorly per se, it's just that they're not choosing their engagements incredibly wisely. They're getting split up by Obey's dive, and they can't engage themselves. Obey being the first ones at each one of these objectives mean that Radiance has to be the one to engage. They don't have fantastic engage potential.
I'm definitely leaning though, Myth, on the comp, because like Radiance's composition is like, who is engaging outside of Aurora? Like, you can't just have one person on engage the entire game. Like, a blink initiation or a good wall is all they really have to their name. Unless you want blink Carly stuns coming through, or a good Cyclone knockup with a gust, that's it. Very much a lackluster hard CC game, this one, which is unusual. Aggression into the jungle from inbound again, looking for an Earthbreaker as the ward wars begin on the angles around the entrances towards the mid lane. FG spawn in about 10 seconds time, and it will be the EFG, the Enhanced Fire Giant, so it will make it a little bit easier for Obey on the sieges. Radiance, though, are here in numbers to defend, and I think they're just going to try and pick that window carefully when they choose to go in.
I really don't want Radiance diving in deep on this Fire Giant right now. I mean, the lead is there for Obey, now nearly 12,000 or 10,000 gold in the lead. They have the defensive positioning. We already know that Radiance doesn't have engaged potential. They should just wait for these Phoenix sieges to happen and then use their comp, what they really designed it to do, is just counter engage. Right now, if they keep forcing their way into these fights around the neutral objectives inside a Fire Giant or Tier 1 towers, it's going to keep going Obey's way. That's what Obey wants you to do. They want you to step up too far. They want you to split up and try and look for these separate engagements so that they can immediately dive onto your backline.
I like how patient Obey's being around this objective. They're waiting for Radiance to pull in too deep, and Benji just overextended a bit too much. The wraparound at the same time from Aurora, though, he got isolated trying to support Benji on a flanking rotation. And with him off the table and his ultimate too, Obey come up huge there in the midfield area. Over to the FG they go then to start up this, and on zone duty is Ducky. So is Cyno, who's just making sure mid lane is kept safe too. But Ducky's eating a bit more damage to bargain for there by those chopping hands of that Carly. Fire Giant falls, and now we've got 30 seconds where Obey have a man advantage.
What a power play. Aurora, question marks in my head. The second Benji's in the air, you know he's out, but Aurora engages anyway on the tail end of it and gets picked out instantly by the counter engage from Obey. Again, they don't have any right to be fighting around this Fire Giant. Play around your Phoenixes and group up and play as 5. Now you're dead for another 14 seconds and Obey are already on your Phoenix.
I mean, all you can do is hope to poke them out if you can, but the Phoenix is already dead and Cyno is out of dodge, as is the rest of Obey. Ducky's going to take a bit of a beating on the tail end of that, but he does at least ult away back to safety. And Obey came on for what they got for, and then left again immediately soon after. Now it's just a case of what Radiance can find in response. They're going to keep chasing through the jungle. Benji did get back here relatively quickly to try and slow them down. But Obey are falling back, or is it a bit of a trap? Benji's still giving chase a little bit too deep. He could be cut off. Inbound, though, was looking for Big Man Tings, and Big Man was forced to beads. Cyno under pressure, has to use the ult early on, and CycloneSpin it, a boulder, a little bit more than he bargained for. Good dashing from Aurora, though, and Carly's in the mix, but Carly ain't healing for anything. The chop suey's coming through, but Ducky gets credit for the kill, and Cyno takes down Aurora, who was waiting around. Benji still trying to get hold of Wolfie, and Wolfie does fall, but Wowie stayed alive, I should say. The W's too much for me to handle. And with that, 3 members dead of Radiance. It could march on for maybe the end here. They're a little bit low for my liking. Against a Jingwei and a Hell, could be a bit tricky, this.
And the damage potential from Hell is nothing to sleep on here. He's got so much damage online. Soul Reaver, Rod up to Hootie. He's going to be able to defend pretty well, but Obey, 4 members strong. Ultimate's starting to come back online. They're healing up with the Enhanced Fire Giant. The damage potential is there, and they've got so much time to work with. They got the Wave into the Titan now. I don't know. It's going to be hard, Radiance.
Well, I don't know how hard it's really going to be. When you look at the player damage, these 2 characters on your screen haven't done a whole ton, less than 12k between each of them. And that's going to be an awkward situation. So Obey, you're going to take game 1. For me, this all comes down to picks and bans. Both teams, bit awkward for my liking, but at the end of the day, Obey come out on top.
Radiance just looks so stubborn to me, taking all these engagements where they know they're not favored. They keep going into these fights. Chasing out after that Phoenix fell down, I don't know. It's a huge question mark. What are you looking for on the tail end of that? Best case for Radiance there, they get 2, maybe 3 picks and a tier 2 tower on the tail end of it. It seems like they just weren't ready to accept the failings of their draft and work around it, instead trying to just play through with raw mechanical skill. Won't work out in the Pro League.
I don't know, Myth, if they really could play around it. They were stuck in an awkward situation from minute 1 of that game. And a great play from Obey came out on top. Great plays from them, even though they fell behind around the 10-minute mark. Let's see what Dawson's going to say on the desk and break this one down.
Sorry, Graham, I've been paying attention to my SMITE crossword puzzle, and I'm really struggling with 7 down here. It's an 8-letter word for best gaming chair around. Oh, it's Maxonomic. It's obviously the best gaming chair around. Maxonomic, $50 off now using code SMITEMAX. Let me fill that in on my sheet immediately. And now I think the bonus page makes much more sense to me, needforseat.com. And then the bonus page, your name, your logo, obviously jumps out at me. Can't believe I got that one wrong. Gore, maybe you can help me fill in the blank on game number 1. What goes right for Obey?
Well, honestly, what goes right for Obey is what Radiance do wrong for a lot of that fight. I mean, they just didn't feel like they were on the same page for, well, how long was the game? 40 minutes? It just so much of their engagements were, hey, that guy went in. I kind of want to go in. Let's see if I can do it. And even though we were talking about Obey being maybe centered around a more early game fight, it didn't matter to them. They were playing perfectly fine from 15 minutes on.
And you look at what happened early. It's Cyno getting first blood, as maybe we need to start expecting here for Obey. And the answers back for Radiance were there, but it was 2 double kills for Aurora. So you stack all of these kills on your support, which, I mean, you can hardly say that's a bad thing. But I agree with your statement. Once you kind of got to that early team fighting phase, it just felt like Obey weren't going to be stopped.
I mean, I can't count how many engagements that we got to end up seeing where Benji went in and then Benji tried to get out, and then Aurora would go in, and it felt almost as though Radiance were picking themselves off after, 25 minutes into the game. Obey had really good late game fights. Again, I think Mifflin said it best. Throw all conventional Smite knowledge you have, especially about these 5 gods Obey brought into this. It feels, inbound needs to get these big picks, and it's early game oriented, get themselves a lead by 10 minutes, and then just hold it. They didn't care about that aspect. They were able to turn these fights into 3-on-1s, 3-on-2s in a lot of these engagements, right. And they just picked up kill after kill and CC'd you to death.
And Gore, I mean, as much as I think it's important to look at the good and great even for Obey this game, the fallout from some of that is of course bad for Radiance. CycloneSpin somewhat MIA, I'd argue, here in game number 1. 0, 2, and 1. Yeah. Numbers maybe inflate on the Titan defense, but lowest damage in the game there for a little while. Remember, last week against United, kind of sitting on CycloneSpin, keeping that damage down. 8,000 by the end of the game on a Jing Wei that you want to start to have scaling, especially 34 minutes in. Obey did a great job of keeping Cyclone down.
Yeah, they did not have the impact you want out of your carry there for CycloneSpin. And, well, hey, he got most wards placed. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to convert any of that vision into the team fight. So it just kind of started to fall apart for them. And a lot of that isn't necessarily on CycloneSpin. It's really on the front lines that came down to it. Again, they were picking fights, usually in 2 or 3 sometimes separate areas. There's nowhere for him to choose and stick to. There wasn't anything cohesive that it felt like from Radiance, as opposed to Obey, who were just kind of 5-manning everything after a certain point. And so even though they were very heavy on the physical side, and maybe something that should be a detriment to Obey, it never caused them any trouble.
Of I think the obvious now big question is moving into Game 2. Are there pick ban differences as we maybe take a jump into those that Radiance can make to give themselves an edge? I mean, there was obvious high priority towards Cyno in the jungle. Remember banning out 3 of his, favorite now picks. It's always hard to say because obviously you go into a game with a strategy and Obey's just kind of worked out there. But is there anything that does jump out at you that you want to see changed by Radiance moving into picks and bans here for Game 2?
Well, there's certain things. I think it's getting Aurora onto something comfortable. I think that's the biggest deal that has kind of changed for Radiance. We've seen a lot of these teams. They do have that flexibility. You know what? Sanguine maybe occasionally could bring out things like the Freya, and Obey can run a Nike jungle, even a Sun Wukong jungle, which is not anything I expected to see coming into Season 7, period. But there's just not... You can't overlook the comfort picks, right? You can't overlook getting someone on a signature god or something like that because of how potent it can be. And I think that game just felt so disconnected from Radiance that I want them to fall back on the most predictable gods for every single one of them. Every member playing something that is, just like the staple for them. Because then you just play what you know. You can kind of, AFK your brain in terms of mechanics because you've got it down pat and you can focus more on the game at hand.
And I am very curious now where Radiance will go. Notice the Merlin ban. Nike doesn't necessarily jump out at me. Pretty obvious there. But it's Raijin normally is that first god taken away from Wolfie. Instead, Radiance are going to move away from that, ban out the Merlin, hover the Hercules here for Aurora. I actually would enjoy that pick. I tend to agree with the statement you made. Let's get Aurora on something aggressive and through that comfortable. But they are going to move back to that Raijin. So ban out the Merlin, take away the Raijin, and that's kind of a 1-2 punch. Great for big man Tings. Bit bad there for Wolfie, though. He's going to have to go down his own personal tier list a little bit.
It's going to keep him safe, though, I think, and that's the biggest thing. Having a pretty good disengage as compared to what Hell has. So, yeah, you're losing the sustain, but you're trading it for damage and, again, safety in the mid lane, which theoretically can slow down the pace of Hercules. But, when I look at Hercules support, which more than likely is what Inbound wants to run, especially because that Vamana can flex into solo, or it's weird to say this again, but even into the jungle for Obey, slowing them down didn't seem to do much in Game 1, and so my intuition is, hey, slow them down, stop them from being potent. It might not help.
Well, remember what happened yesterday, and this is kind of zoomed out, large-scale look at it, where Obey had a lot figured out kind of early on in game number 1, and then game 2 was a little bit more back and forth, but the Knights win. Game 3, the Knights look even more convincing, so this is, well, obviously it has to be the bounce-back game for Radiance too. Yeah. Avoid falling to Obey. But maybe pull a little bit from what you learned in Game 1 and apply that to 2 and 3. Difference, though, and maybe not so much, looks like Terra one more time here for Aurora. Didn't necessarily look uncomfortable. I mean, like the stats show 4 kills almost right off the bat in Game 1. But maybe instead it's the Poseidon that catches your eye here, Corey.
My favorite thing about Obey right now is that you could take your tier list and you could look at it, and you know what? There are some there. Uller belongs down there. Merlin belongs down there in the bans. They are at the top, and things like that are to be expected. but sometimes they just crumple it up and toss it over their shoulder. They don't care what is supposed to, be in or be out. And I really like the way they've gone with this. You're trying to control Raijin. He can't escape a Poseidon too easily. You want to make it difficult for Terra to be able to get in, get out, and cause disruption. Again, Whirlpool does a lot for that. And then you also set it up. Hercules gets a knockback, pushback into a Whirlpool Kraken. Like, it's just kill combo potential. And let alone the secure that he brings. Kraken on a Fire Giant, boom, that's ours, no matter what. And I just like that Obey it feels like they're more willing to go out on that thin branch that some of the other players and teams in the league just aren't willing to try.
And this is a branch for Wolfie, make no mistake. I mean, obviously, incredibly talented, but if you look at the last 6 games that Obey have played, it's been Raijin or Merlin, one of the two. Radiance identify that. We'll take both away in some capacity. Now it's Poseidon, a new look at a god here for Wolfie. Plenty has happened, though, in the meantime. Little jungle priority for Obey in their second round of bans. Amaterasu being taken off the table as well. Pick up the Hachiman, but Cucullin's still left open. Relatively low pick rate and beneath 50% win rate, Gore. Do you like this pickup, presumably for the solo lane for Radiance?
I think it's going to be interesting. I think a lot of it is disruption, what he can bring in terms of controlling the fight. And last game, they didn't really have that with the Kamizatsu. He would go in, he would get melted himself. Terra would go in, she'd get melted herself. The Cucullin, along with the Terra, allows them to maybe have that good cop, bad cop vibe that you want. Let Terra play the safety and peel for the team, and Cucullin play the engage and initiate the knock-up for them to be able to go in, especially alongside something like a Hunbats. It opens the door for engagements to be a little bit more in favor of Radiance, but again, last game they were starting the engagements off just fine. It was ending them that was the problem.
I remember Sobek has started to launch forward, especially in that solo lane, and gods that are difficult to deal with as the game goes on. You look at these 10 picks here, Gore. Does it look like Obey have a good shot to take this one 2-0, or do you still think Radiance have some fight left in them with the team they've drafted?
I think Radiance are leaning a little bit more on a limb than they were last game. Again, comfort picks don't come to my mind with this, but I think the combo of Raijin, Chernobog, and Hunbats as your damage dealers, it's very difficult to bet against. I've seen what Obey can do with this kind of lineup, so I want to hedge my bets towards them, but it's 51-49 for me in favor of Radiance.
Obey continue their trend of winning game 1. Can they take this one 2-0, or will Radiance bounce back? We'll go down to Hindu Man to find out.
Thanks a lot, Dawson and Go on the desk. I mean, for my money, Myth, looking at what happened in game 1, it felt a little bit that Radiance were wanting to almost test the water to see how good Obey was, because that draft wasn't great. This draft, however, completely different story. This is very much a comfortable situation for them all to be in. Benji piloting, well, he's got a skin for his piloting of Cucullin at one point at a World Championship, so don't be surprised if he does work in that lane. He's against a Sobek, though, so it's going to be a bit tricky there. But I am a little bit more confident about how Radiance have drafted here and how this composition is going to come together.
Radiance definitely found their engage. Now they've got adapting with Blink Ultimate available. Fear No Evil is going to be a fantastic engage tool. They still have Terra. It wasn't great on its own, but now with a Hunbots there as well, she's going to have a much easier time finding her way in there. They've got late game still, but they don't give up the early game either. Benji on this Cucullin's going to have a very easy time just establishing at least wave dominance in that lane, if not being able to bully out a Sobek, which is a hard task for just about anyone in the world ever. Sobek has so much defense, health, and sustain in his kit. I like Radiance's draft a lot more now. If they get the same early game that they got last time, Obey's going to have a much harder time trying to abuse them.
Completely agree, and I think the issue Obey are going to run into here is Sobek is going to be on the defensive in that lane early on. It's opened up the window for Benji to get commanding control of this lane and maybe start to pressure onto those blue buffs. It's out in the mid lane though, we'll see how that does as Adapting's going to get swung around on as the Earthbreaker actually, so the driving strike pushed him away. But Big Man Tig's just bit off more than he can chew maybe there by dashing in. The beads was more than anything, just to go, please don't hit me, please don't have your Earthbreaker up. Big Man didn't at that moment in time, and he's still trying to hang around for the wave. He's going to be careful here though if he wants to keep this up about getting aggro off these creeps. However, it's going to be slow going on clearing out that wave, and now a trip back to base for Big Man is in order.
There was a slight relic trade there. Sino has to use his blink. Raijin has to use his beads. Who comes out ahead? Almost certainly Obey. You can still find your way into that backline, and now BMT is going to have to be playing in the defensive for at least another 2 minutes while he waits for those beads to come back online. If Bobby decides to continue camping out that mid lane, That's a huge kill potential there. If he gets hit by the pluck, immediately BMT should be put down by the huge damage potential from Wolfie. The cripple can come out to make sure that the jump doesn't come through either. Raijin should fall relatively easily if they decide to keep putting the pressure there. But it seems like Bobby's going to go ahead and return back to that duo lane, make sure that Wowie gets off to a good start, not have to deal with some of that aggression that Terra and Chernobog can bring.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons we actually see him inbound turn back to that left-hand side is to make sure we get this Poseidon at a comfortable level, making sure Wolfie gets as much experience as possible. Poseidon's level 5 is fantastic. You can want to play around that power play of the Kraken, and obviously having a nice high-level mid-lane mage, if possible, with that Whirlpool. Those cripples are going to be quite important this game, I feel. Shuts down a lot of what Terra and Big Man can really do to get themselves caught in an awkward situation. Their escapes might not be as useful.
I'm keeping my eyes on level 5. I'm expecting Adapting to come in big and in a big way this game. The second he hits 5, he can look to engage onto Wolfie, get huge follow-up damage from BMT from a long range. He's going to be able to get a lot of pressure early on. Cyno plays this Vamana more like an assassin than just about anyone else. He sacrifices a lot of defense in the build that we've seen him using a lot, so he's going to have a much harder time engaging in the early game. He's going to wait to get some of that damage online through his auto attacks. We usually see him go for the Crusher straight into Atalanta's bow. Whereas Adapting, the second Fear No Evil's online, he is a threat on the map.
Ooh, bit of a mistake from Benji, and that might just be punished enough by Ducky. Thanks very much, he says. I'll take a free kill under my tier 1 tower. Don't know what you're doing there, but thanks a lot. I'll take first blood and 400 gold. Yes, please.
Benji jumping on tier 1 tower line, that is disrespectful, and Ducky puts him down for it. What are you trying for there, Benji? Trying to just get a little bit of lane pressure? Ducky says no way, finds the pluck. That's tower damage immediately landed into his chest, and he's not going to have the Glad Shield come online yet. Instead, Benji decides to pick up this Ninja Tab. He's looking to poke out constantly, but his sustain's going to take a hit. He's not going to be able to sit in lane nearly as long as Ducky will in the Sobek, and if you're making aggressive plays like that, sustain's definitely something you're going to want.
Yeah, it actually gives Ducky a bit of a lead in that lane, funny enough, in terms of experience now, because some minions were missed. Nice Blink Earthbreaker attempt from inbound there, but Big Man read it well. Thunder crashed away just in time before the Earthbreaker connected. I think, if anything, that might just heat up Benji in that solo lane now. I've seen him, have a mistake or two in laning phase, maybe got himself dropped down lower than bargained for, but he always bounces back relatively strong, so just keep an eye on that works out on that right-hand side. Does look like Ducky, though, with the TP, is a bit of a difference there up against Benji, who's gone for the blink option. We've seen a bit more of this, Myth, too. These teleports not being picked up all the time. I just wonder how much more we'll see of that through the season.
If you don't go for teleport in the early game, it immediately indicates to me that you're looking to rotate out a lane and make your plays elsewhere.
Did you stop because inbound for a boulder then? Is that why you stopped?
I did. I thought maybe there would be like a driving strike afterward, but this is where I should drop.
Bobby ain't gonna hit anything. However, Fear No Evil coming over the top. Kraken deletes one, but it's traded out as inbound goes down. Vermana's big baby. I mean, he was in a big baby form for a while, but the BBs went back to sleep there soon afterwards. 2 for 2 exchange. Sorry, 2 for 1, I should say. Big man for Cyno and inbound. That works out pretty well for Radiance. They won't be too upset. It allows Adapting to get some more of that farm in the mid lane. And now some deep rotations to the backside from both Benji and Adapting. Bad news bears, though. There's nothing really up in the jungle for them to take. And that was off the back of Obey getting aggressive in Radiance's jungle.
I mean, Obey's going to get aggressive anywhere at any point. They've got Bobby on Hercules. It fits the playstyle, fits the player. He wants to get involved in the early game, and he absolutely should. A little bit misplaced aggression there. Gets Cyno killed, though, and now Cyno's going to be a level down on this Hun bots from Adapting. That's not what you want. You need Cyno getting these items online as quickly as possible so he can start dealing damage to BMT, so he can start diving a little bit more easily. If he's not going to get defense in his build, he's going to need levels to survive.
Bobby nearly got pinched on that angle there, but the dash just off the mark from Aurora, as was the percussive storm coming out from Big Man Tings. So he slips away from danger for a second or two. Left-hand side Oracle's being secured now by Cyno, who has gone for the Talaria boot so far, but he's a little bit behind in gold at the moment, so can't continue to work it up. Looks like Adapting also going the same route. I wonder if we'll see the Jotun's Wrath on this Hun Bats. I've seen a little bit more of it as of late, and I think a lot of it really comes down to that extra cooldown reduction.
Yeah, those recent nerfs to Fear No Evil make cooldown even more integral to Hun bots. I've seen it picked up in high-level ranked play. You usually see him go into the Jotuns and then immediately into a hi-rez or an Erendite to just make sure you get some of that CDR online and make sure you can spam out those ultimates. Right now, he's just really a beads burner for his squad so that Aurora can get in and find the engage on the tail end of it. But fantastic beads burner in of itself. Hunbot's Fear No Evil is one of the most potent tools that any assassin has inside of an ultimate. Sino, sure, getting a good job just crawling his way back into that gold lead, that XP lead, matches Adapting's level 8, but he hasn't been involved quite yet this game in any meaningful way. Sino, sure, absolutely fine waiting for late game, though. He knows that once the team fight phase rolls around, he's going to have a very easy time diving deep on a Cyclone. He's going to have a very easy time finding his way into BMT. I imagine Obey's strategy this game is to wait for Adapting to blink in and then immediately surge forward and start attacking.
But I think the issue is if they try and surge forward, they've still got to get through this Terror and this Cullen that's on your screen too. We'll see how these come into play later on. So I do think you're right, Adapting should be on beads burning duty. Although, I was saying that, but he has gone for that Brawler's bead sticking instead here, which still makes sense to me because the amount of healing that we do see on Obey's roster, you know, Sobek, Hercules, and Vermana all do rely on forms of sustain to stay in the fray a little bit longer. So a bit of anti-heal there would reduce a lot of what Sino could bring in that ultimate. Same could be said for inbound regeneration options.
And Divine Ruin already online for BMT as well. The prolonged engagement from Obey is going to take a slight hit here, but even then, it's still dive potential and instant burst. That's Obey's MO since day one. Kraken's going to work incredibly well with that. Anti-heal is going to be a valuable pickup, and it's fantastic flat pen for both characters, but even then, it's not going to be able to enough in of itself to slow down that aggression. If you really want to stop Sinosure, look outside of anti-heal and keep your eyes on Shell to get those auto-attack blocking stacks.
Well, it didn't feel last game that I really saw much of the two hunters involved. If anything, where we got a couple of shots off, but Cyclone was relatively, you know, unavailable to be involved in the fights with how it went on. This time, though, on the Chernobog, I've not seen a rotation out of him yet, but I am interested to see if we can start to see some of those. Bit of a gank opportunity on Benji, but this is opening up a window for Radiance into the Gold Fury area. If they realize that Benji has 3 here, and they will just about now, they might start to look to commit. But this is Benji on Cullen, trying to buy as much time as possible. The rest of his team aren't doing anything. Benji, though, meanwhile, is still buying time. And as the gank shot onto Wolfie's there, Wolfie just removes Aurora from the map. Discombobulated from Radiance, a little bit lackluster. Adapting waited longer than maybe bargained for from Aurora. Aurora just ate more damage than he expected. And so, Radiance get a free kill in the mid lane when they should have just lost Wolfie.
That strange play from Radiance there. There was clearly a plan. Adapting's already behind the tower. Aurora knows that the follow-up will be there, but it was such a slow rotation. It seems like Adapting was hesitant to use his blink. It seemed like he really wanted to maintain it. Aurora falls. Adapting rolls his eyes and says, oh, well, I guess I have to. And then he blinks in and finds the kill. Should have been a lot cleaner, especially considering Radiance had full knowledge that the majority of Obey was on the other side of the map. Just dive in immediately and find the kill. Now Aurora has to fall for really no reason.
Cyclone getting aggressive in lane there, but I do want to touch on the Poseidon play from Wolfie there. I think a lot of people still meme on the lad after the World Championships disaster, but he's got a solid Poseidon outside of that one mistake he really made here. He kind of just punished Aurora for doing that. An invasion attempt onto the Pyromancer comes out, and hello, Sino was there for a second, but ate way more damage than he expected to. Didn't even get time to get his ult off. Disappointing there from Sino. Kind of returns the play from Aurora in the mid lane there now. Benji starting to proxy farm on this right-hand side as Radiant start to take this game by the scruff of the neck.
About 2,000 golden lead. My heart goes out to Sino there. His plan was blink over the wall, start your dash. If it steals the objective, awesome. If it doesn't, at least I'm dashing away. But unfortunate for him, blinks directly into Aurora's stun and gets shut down immediately by that damage. It's a heartbreaker for sure, but even then, not that big of a deal. Only 1 level deficit out of the jungle, Adapting now 2 levels up actually. That's a little bit bigger of a deal. Gonna get that second relic online a lot more quickly. Sino's going to have to go back into farm mode, trying to get some of these XP back, trying to get his levels back in order. Because right now, a level 10 Vamana in your jungle role, that's not going to have very much impact at all.
Yeah, that's a good point. I want to see if we can see Radiance get aggressive, knowing that's the situation then. If Cyclone needs to farm up, then force fights a little bit more so. Cyclone's aggression in this duo lane so far up against Worry moments ago. He's got a bit of a level lead and a kill to his name now, but that's actually forcing Inbound back to this left-hand side a little bit more so. Also for the same reason that Cyno can soak up some experience and not split with as many people outside of Wolfie. But Radiance look like they'll be on the hunt a little bit more. You can see them just playing a little bit further up in the laning phase now. As Inbound going to blink on in, getting aggressive with that Earthbreaker. Didn't really find a home though this time round. Chernobog on the mark for that.
My eyes are still constantly glued to adapting. Everywhere the aggression starts on the side of Radiance, you know adapting's there. He knows he has the jungle lead as well. He doesn't have to farm up nearly as much. He can start spending his time trying to put his lanes ahead, and that's exactly where he should go. I think you pointed out well. They know that Cyno's far behind. They know he doesn't have that second relic available. Radiance have the power play right now. They've already got about a 3,000 gold lead. They've got fantastic team fight tools. They know that Bobby's already used his blink as well, so if they decide to move in towards this gold fury, Obey's going to have an incredibly hard time stopping it.
Yeah, just going to be careful of those Krakens potentially from Wolfie here, so just keeping him zoned is important. Fury getting very low though. Wolfie wants to come into the pit, gets a good Kraken off and adapting, but it's not enough for the Fury at all. Boulder out
Big
from
steal.
Inbound for some unknown reason, but Wolfie's also going to get it. Was that stolen away? It was indeed, you were right, but adapting takes out Inbound. Chernobog in the sty, Cyclone looking for an exit route, but his options are very, very limited. Hide in the wall, Cyclone, please. Ducky's looking at him like, come out, son. Wowie gets credit for the kill, but Big Man at least answers that one back. Benji into the fray, forces Ducky out, and it's a 3-for-1. Obey get the Fury, but now Radiance get a bit of free time farming the map. I don't know if that was really worthwhile at the end of the day.
It's worthwhile for Obey to slow down that neutral objective farm. Yes, they do lose out on 3 members, so the XP is going to go the way of Radiance, but they're still able to stop that siege from the tier 1 mid tower. That's going to be a bastion of safety now that Obey can rely on and just not have to worry about, you know, trying to defend the next objective and fall back. Oh, nothing's there to protect me. And meanwhile, what was Cyno doing during that whole engagement? He was farming up the map. Now he's matched the level. He's already invaded the speed buff. Now he's going to be able to get involved in the next fight a lot more easily. Adapting now falls himself, or 3-0 is his slash line. But the XP deficit is all but gone now. Cyno can get involved a lot more easily. He can dive into the backline. BMT was allowed to free cast. That's not going to continue if Cyno shares the next fight.
It's a very good point indeed. I mean, that fight was a bit back and forth, but it did buy Cyno some time. Luckily enough, they stole the Fury away. Still don't even know what stole it, funny enough. It might have been a Whirlpool tick from Wolfie, if anything, with how that one played out, because I was so busy watching what was going on the backside of that fight around Inbound. I couldn't be sure. I didn't even notice it was stolen. It was very, very tricky indeed. So with that, the goal lead is still only 3,000 in favor of Radiance here. Experience marginally in their favor too, especially with Benji and CycloneSpin with a hair lead over their lane oppositions. Inbound though, level 10, just a little bit behind that of Aurora at the moment, but Benji is starting to roam a lot more in this Kakulon at level 15 now. He's realized it's going to be very tricky for them to really burst him down with how this one's gone. And with that build he's gone for as well here, Mystical Mail, is just going to help him out a little bit more for doing free damage. Definitely an item that gets overlooked these days.
Mystical Mail's got a weird matchup into Hercules. He's going to get his heals procs a little bit more easily, get those burst heals going for himself. But even then, that consistent damage output is going to make him just even more worrisome for the backline of Obey. And it meshes incredibly well with Kakulin's second ability, which is going to bring exactly that, more constant aura tick damage around him. So he's almost got like a shred potential just from standing near people.
Ducky's trying to deal with that tier 2 tower proxy from Benji at the moment, but that means that minion wave should get towards his tower relatively soon, and maybe even kill it before he can get back now. Rotation coming out from Cyno to help out. You did see the Fear No Evil from adapting earlier on, as a Kraken from Wolfie connects with Big Man in mid lane, but it's absorbed by the Aegis. Benji may have bitten off more than he can chew, but he's finding a lot of time. Rotation coming out from Radiance now as Aurora turns up to the fray. Benji has finally died to the 3-man army of Obey, but Big Man took out Wolfie in mid on the rotation, and now Inbound could soon to be follow. He did get a heal off, but it's not going to be good enough. Ducky now trying to buy time, needs some support, and gets it from Wolfie. So from Wowie, but Wowie, can he get the kill on adapting? No, the juke over the wall with the somersault's good. Ducky then tries to go from 2, but blink for blink into a blink from Cyno that secures the kill on adapting. Ducky's still on the defensive here, all the while Big Man Ting's whacking away at the tier 1 tower in mid. Tier 1 on the right-hand side falls too. A crazy engage that in the big picture, Radiance come out on top, and now they can go for a Pyromancer.
Yeah, big dubs for Radiance. Take out the mid tower, get the advantageous trade, 3 for 2 in favor of Radiance, and then get the Pyromancer on the tail end. That's a huge gold and XP swing, now 4,000 in favor of Radiance, and they've shown that they're able to fight in. Cyno immediately is forced to disengage once Radiance responds, and has to back up all the way to his tier 2 tower, which creates space for Radiance to dive whoever they want. Wowie's left high and dry, they put him in the dirt. Wolfie's left alone, rest in peace, and now Radiance can just go wherever they want. Gold Fury spawns in exactly 1 minute. I imagine that they're going to be the first ones on the scene, and Obey is going to have to fight into Radiance's defensive composition. Terra wasn't quite able to use it exactly well last game because Radiance was on the back foot, but now that they're going to be the aggressors on this Gold Fury, if Obey work their way in, they're going to have to contend with that counter dive potential, as well as adapting now, having huge amounts of CC in his ultimate. That's going to be hard to work through as well. Wolfie on this Poseidon doesn't have very ranged engage either. Kraken can't really get in safely. Radiance is going to have a very easy time just confirming this objective.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's very easy to look back at that fight and how the tail of the tape went. Adapting used his Fear No Evil defensively to try and get a pick on Cyno, and then that engagement escalated on the right-hand side, and we saw Wolfie get the Kraken off on Big Man, the 80 with the Aegis, but I didn't see exactly how Wolfie died there. I think he might have just been picked off on that rotation, because Big Man did the majority of the damage, I want to say, but that actually delayed him getting to that fray even more so between the two. 10-6 then, as the Primal Fury is now going to spawn up. The Oracles are in favor of Obey at the moment, as Aurora and Cyclone are now in this duo lane. 2-level lead for Cyclone in this lane as it stands at the moment, as Big Man just developed a 2-level lead in mid lane over Wolfie at 16.
Man, look at the player damage chart. 2,000 coming out from Bobby, 2,000 coming out from Wowie. You're going to need more in these team fights, and it's not exactly either of their faults right now. They're just getting focused in. Bobby's usually the first one in the engagement for Obey, and the counter engage from Radiance has been so strong. Wowie gets immediately eviscerated the second he shows face in a single team fight. Just doesn't have very many opportunities to get that damage online, but they're going to need to play more safely and find it if they want to defend this gold.
Yeah, I think Inbound's just been a little bit off with some of these Driving Strike Earthquaker combos, and now he's being focused down. He takes a ton of damage, more than bargained for. Benji's Blink Initiation there was beautiful after the setup from a roll and that Terror. Kraken to save the day onto CycloneSpin and slow him down a little bit. No relics used though from that, as Cyno now takes on Big Man Tings. Good jukes away from the drums, and now it's actually the drummer that's going to turn tail and run away if he can. Adapting over the wall though to support, and Cyno's ultimate on cooldown means Big Man will leave. Wowie, Wolfie, and Ducky just kind of look on as Benji goes, "You shall not pass," and the Primal Fury is started up, taken away by Radiance. Unless Ducky can stop it, he won't get the window, and now he could die instead.
He should absolutely go down. No pluck, no ultimate. That's a free kill for them. Benji does a fantastic job zoning off the other two members there. And again, my heart still goes out to Cynosure. He plays that fight incredibly well, immediately jukes away once BMT starts using his ultimate. None of the shots really connect. He gets his health back online, but the damage output from this Raijin is absolutely crippling. Divine Ruin and Spear of Deso and the Soul Reaver are all online already. The second he decides to move back up, it was just the Raiju and the one combo from Raijin enough to put him immediately down from 60% health. It's unfortunate. That's the trade-off, though. When you pick Vamana jungle and you decide not to go any defense, you're going to be squishy, and you're a huge, easy-to-hit target once you use that ultimate.
I will say, though, at the start of that fight was all focused on Inbound, and him being removed from the fight on initial entry was a big talking point, because that really just left the backline with Ducky to peel for them, and definitely made it a 4v5 from the get-go in that situation. It was a good opportunity from Radiance, recognized, they capitalized on it, and now they've set themselves up to be in a good, comfortable position. 6k lead here as they start to dance around the Fire Giant. CycloneSpin going to push out mid lane, get a bit of pressure there for themselves, and if Obey don't pay attention to it, keep on marching on down that lane. Instead, over to the Fire Giant go Radiance. Obey still hanging around, making sure they can be in a position to defend it. It's going to be a tricky ask, though, I would say.
Obey's entire strategy is contingent on being able to kill BMT instantly. He's been such a huge factor in all these team fights. The burst potential, the dive potential as well. He's been able to just completely keep out anyone that moves up first. If Bobby tries to move in at all, immediately 50% of his health bar is gone.
Cyno trading out with Adapting. At the end of the day, this doesn't work out for Cyno at all, because the anti-heal's there, and it picks up the kill for CycloneSpin. Ducky on the front line now being focused. The damage dealers from Obey are backpedaling at the moment, because Benji's running at them, and Minbam's trying to help him out, but that just leaves Ducky even more alone in this. And look at Benji go! Roar kills off Wowie. Inbound used the driving strike already. Just 2 members left for Obey with their ultimates, and they're both returning to base. Beautiful fight from Radiance. Cyno dies too quick, and then the collapse begins.
Fantastic counter engage from Cyclone as well, using the ultimate, knowing that Cyno's dashes down, he immediately has to go into the ultimate there, and it's just going to be easy pickings from that point forward. Obey just get picked out early on in the engagement. They need to cut their losses, and instead they try and move up and help out Cyno. He's already dead. Let him go. Now 3 members dead on the side of Obey. Radiance get the Fire Giant and the power play on that tier 2 tower. Things are getting rough. Now 11,000 gold in the lead as well. Pyromancer is going to go down for free. There's plenty of towers left on the map for Radiance to exploit there. Their siege potential is incredibly strong as well. Adapting, going to continue doing what he's been doing the entirety of the game, blinking in, dropping Fear No Evil. If he gets a kill, fantastic. If he burns beads, he's already done his job. And then from there, a Roar is going to be in the engage, and no more beads available. Those roots are going to be huge. The stuns as well. Benji diving that backline constantly, making it hard for Wolfie to become any sort of relevant factor in the team fight. Radiance really do have the driver's seat.
You're casting a bit quicker now. I guess it's with the pace of the game, right? You're not getting a chance to speak, so 22 kills in 22 minutes. It kind of leans that way with the speed of this one in Game 2. But Myth, this is really what we expected of Radiance in Game 1, I want to say. I think this is what we expect, and I think that Game 1 test was credit to Obey for the way they played it. But Radiance didn't really come to the office in that first game. Their composition was awkward, and now they're looking as good as they did once upon a time. I think the interesting thing about Radiance is the moment before they started to go on this sort of slump that Cyclone himself said that they've gone into here. The casters, you know, we guys were starting to notice that they looked almost unbeatable. And now they're starting to struggle a little bit, but this game is looking good for them here unless Obey can put up some sort of defense on this Phoenix line.
For Obey Alliance, with their comp, the best defense is a good offense. You need Cyno blinking in, finding the multi-man knockup, immediately find the Kraken from Wolfie. It hasn't worked yet, but it should be simplified on these Phoenix defenses. You have the 5-man stack from both teams. They should be able to find that engagement a lot more easily. They know exactly what Radiance is going to try and do. It's exactly what I said earlier. Adapting's likely going to try and blink in with the ultimate. Aurora is going to try and follow up. If they know that dive is coming, that gives them the window to try and find the counter engagement there. If Radiance finds their way into this Phoenix, with CycloneSpin being as ahead as he is, it should instantly burn. Obey's going to have to keep him completely out.
Inbound zone from the front, good flip onto Benji of all people, but look at the crits rated on Ducky's face! He got no chance to get his lurking in the waters off, so he's already out of the fray! Benji tanked up that Phoenix for all that time, a swoop to the backside goes Cyclone to join Adapting and take the life of Wolfie. The Phoenix on the left-hand side will fall down, and this could just be game now, because Cyno's ultimate down, Wowie's ultimate down, and everybody on Radiance is still fine. This is going to a Game 3. Radiance bounced back after Obey started things off in Game 1 well. Radiance just show what they've got.
I want to break down that last team fight, but I literally blinked my eyes and it was over. I see Ducky going for the pluck, Adapting drops ultimate there, and then blink. Oh, it's gone. 3 members dead on the side of Obey. Blink again, Titan as well. All right. It's just a poor engage again. It seems like they weren't able to utilize their draft incredibly well. Cyno was effectively removed from that game from the offset. He didn't have any fantastic engagements, and that's the first time it's happened to him in the league. If Radiance keep this pressure up on him, that might be the way to shut down Obey.
It was a good back and forth encounter though between the two. With how these two games have played, we've seen the best of Obey, and I think we're seeing closer towards the best of Radiance. So that leads us on to a Game 3. But before that, let's go back to Dave and see how that crossword's getting on.
Well, I'm done. Maxonomic was the last word there, and instead I have something else to let you guys know about here. It's the Lightbringers Battle Pass, and it's your last chance to jump into game and get it now. Monday, May 18th is the last day of the Battle Pass, so make sure to move in, unlock all of those tiers, 4 exclusive skins, a bunch of gems, and a whole lot more content in that Battle Pass, so get it now before it all goes away here in a couple of days. Gormizer, Obey, and Game 3s seem to be magnetized towards one another now. But before we get into that's all pick-ban conversations. How we got there, we have to look to game number 2. A totally different look here for Radiance. I think a notable bounce-back performance from CycloneSpin after a rough game 1. Very, very clean here from Radiance, and maybe what they need after the last 4 or 5 games of struggle for them.
Yeah, Cyclone and Tings have some immensely big games that come through, and like you said, a big turnaround for Cyclone compared to Game 1. But did you forget about Benji's Kukulkan? I had forgotten about Benji's Kukulkan going into that game, and I'm not going to forget about it anytime soon based on the way he just played it. I think the draft they get for Radiance there, I underestimated it, I think is the only words that I can use for it, and that's the biggest thing. Adapting was on point with where he was putting his aggression on the Hunbats, having the amount of massive damage Big Man Tings was able to pump out. That's the thing I think I'm most excited to see. At 6-1 and 8 slash lines, you could argue which one was better between him and CycloneSpin with 5-1 and 10, but the damage number that Big Man Tings was able to put out, I expect to be, well, leagues ahead of everyone, almost everyone. Benji still outdamages him just a little bit, but still 5K between him and anybody on Obey, that's massive.
And everyone on Radiance dies once, except for Benji. Benji had one death, and the first one, remember, was that solo kill in the solo lane, which caught, I think, a lot of people by surprise. And then throughout the rest of the game, maybe that's the big takeaway here, is Benji gets soloed in lane, but then still has a big turnaround performance, is able to stay relevant, I suppose, play safe, stay relevant, help turn around a lot of these team fights. But from what we've seen from Radiance, would you argue that this is probably some of the cleanest we've seen them in recent weeks even? They've lost 4 out of the last 5. Do you think that this is the now most complete Radiance we've seen in recent games?
I think that was one of the best games they've had in these last few sets, right? And it's just from the beginning, they knew what they were doing. But there's so many moments of that, right? You just watch that highlight. It's Benji goes in, knocks up 3, and is like, cool, let's just keep going. Like, that almost by itself sets up a victory for the fight. Luckily enough, Radiance was able to follow it up. And that's just something that Obey didn't have the lineup to deal with. Benji was able to, again, cause the disruption that the team needed and kind of was lacking in Game 1. And this time around, Obey didn't have the same turnaround potential as they had, especially with the itemization. You get Cursed Ankh, a couple of anti-heal things, and Radiant damage on its own. And it just made it difficult for Cyno to go in, ult, stay alive the way that we've seen on Isvamana in the past.
Well, I guess I should have realized this, but Radiant has been massively prioritized by both teams. Great pick for Big Man Tings. Great pick for Wolfie, so not surprised at all that we've seen Radiant picked or banned in the first 2 iterations of picks and bans. I imagine that doesn't change here. Obey on first pick this time around. Remember last time it was the Merlin ban from Radiance and then immediate Radiant pick if we want to kind of keep that talking point going. Radiance won't have the ability to do that here, but the question then becomes, are Obey willing to first pick that Radiant, give up a couple of other picks? We'll just have to wait and see, but 2 jungle gods right off the bat there, which is weird to say, I suppose, about Nike, but absolutely focused around the jungle. Nike taken away, Thor one more time, and Merlin to follow up.
What Radiance approach the rest of this with is going to be a big deal, because, I mean, as you had pointed out, Wolfie kind of plays 2 gods when it comes down to it, at least 2 gods that we've seen victorious, and that has been the Merlin and the Raijin. So Radiance, they only have 1 more slot for it, but if they ban the Raijin, they force him to fall into one of those other mid picks that maybe didn't work as well for them. Discordia is still, very potent. I think there's enough in mid that maybe you don't need to target him out, but being able to strip away what we've seen successful for Obey would be a big boon to Radiance being able to close this set out with the 2-1.
Oh, there you go. Both Merlin and Raijin off the board. Whether that adds extra pressure or maybe takes away, that need to early pick here in the mid is now the next conversation. If they're kind of saying, all right, well, if one of the 2 are available, we would pick him. Now, Ullr is in that conversation. The flexibility is absolutely there that Ullr could be the mid lane pick here for Wolfie, but absolutely could also be the long lane pick for Wowie.
And that's the glory of a Hunter first pick, specifically a Hunter first pick like Ullr, because it is so flexible in that it's going to keep Radiance guessing, especially if they don't pick a mid laner going into the second phase of bans, because then Radiance are just like, well, who do we target here? Do we want to target out the hunter? Do we want to target out the mage? They might have to split the difference and go for both. They can do what they're doing right now, focus on their duo lane, try to figure out where their comfort's going to be. Yemoja's been interesting. I think a lot of her win rate was like in question, but most of the time we've seen her victorious was for teams like Radiance, so it's in that realm of possibility for her to be controlling here if Radiance are able to get her in the right position.
All right, Fafnir continues to climb up as well in pick ban priority. Pick banned about a third of the time, and inbound will have a great Gauntlet pilot here for himself. Chernobog, much along that same vein, I think, Gormizer, a hunter god, and maybe even specifically for CycloneSpin, but also some different ADCs in the league, has become the pick. And we've seen what the global ult and late game potential will do for a god like that.
I'll be honest, I can't believe I didn't notice Jormungandr getting not banned, I guess, this time around. Ducky loves this Yorm. I mean, it's in Obey's top overall. I mean, in terms of control, it's actually one of the biggest picks for Radiance, so it's kind of confusing to see it go down as far as it did. I think the focus on the Chernobog, again, global presence is very solid. Maybe giving Obey a lot of what I would argue are comfort picks. I mean, we've seen what Inbound can do with this Fafnir in the past, and while pretty much no one else is running it, and honestly it is on the tip of a pin as to whether or not it's going to do really well or really poorly, it's something only Obey are bringing right now, and in conjunction with an Ullr, in conjunction with whatever they decide to either pick up for mid, jungle, or carry, depending on where that Ullr ends up going. It works well, and damage numbers are gonna look good for Obey this time around. It does depend a lot on his stuns, though.
And Agni as well, a god that we've seen pour out massive damage in team fights, obviously depending around those ultimate charges connecting and the whole suite of cooldowns there. Has seen some success, and maybe not as much as the teams that have picked him have wanted. But what do you make of Agni there in the mid lane?
I mean, he's just a staple. Like, he is one of the, I would say, essential mages. I don't know if I want to use the term pinnacle of balance because that has so much weight behind it, but that's kind of where he falls, right? I mean, he's got good damage, good survivability, good CC, but you could probably find another mage that does any one of those things better than him. No one's going to do all three of them as, consistently as Agni can, but again, it depends on if he's in the right hands or not. We've seen him be successful. We've seen him falter very hard. I think when it comes to applying things like Divine Ruin, which now with the Vamana are going to be very important, he can slot right in there and do wonderful things here.
Well, it's Kronos being hovered for Obey. Does that, and I ask this because it doesn't necessarily jump out at me, does that answer the question of Ullr mid versus long lane any better? Now, it will answer the question a little bit better. Ullr goes over to the long lane with Discordia in the mid. I would have loved to see a Kronos there, but it's going to be Discordia instead.
Yeah, I was actually really excited to try and just go through what makes Kronos work so well, but that's not necessarily worthwhile, at least not right now, unless Radiance decide to lock it in, but that'd be even more confusing than anything. Discordia, I mean, her passive along with Fafnir, it means someone's going to get a damage amp late game. It's probably going to be that Ullr, so you have to look at that guy hitting really, really hard. But a lot of the problems that were there for Obey kind of still exist on this composition that they had in Game 2, whereas a lot of the things that were successful, namely Kukulkan and Hunbats, are still there for Radiance. Now you add in some in-combat healing with the Yemoja, you get Chernobog having a global presence early on. I think Radiance have the rotations and control they need in order to maybe keep Obey locked down in their box.
And it's Benji who's going to get another shot at this Kukulkan, and after shrugging off that solo kill in Game 2, he was able to bounce back. So Gormizer, you're putting your hat in the Radiance ring here. We'll see how it all plays out. Can Obey upset Radiance? We'll go down one final time to Hindu Man to learn.
Myth, have you noticed when Dave throws it to me, he always says, we'll go down to Hindu Man? Is he trying to say I'm in hell or something? Is that what he's alluding to here? Does that mean you're in hell with me?
I think maybe he's confused. Your accent might be throwing him. Maybe he thinks you're from Australia or something. I'm not sure myself.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah, I can forgive that one, I guess. Although, you know, I'm not a convict. I don't come from Australia. Yeah, I'll make that shot while I can. Start this game, though. We tied up at 1-1. And I think the most interesting thing I want to mention is that Hercules wasn't picked up by Aurora this game when it was available. It's kind of just showing that, like, he wants to keep it in his back pocket, maybe not show it again for a little while. Or maybe it's just not as potent as they want it to be. But I am interested to see how this matchup works this time round.
What I see right now is that Radiance sacrificed a little bit of their engage. They could have picked up that Hercules and had another frontliner, but with the addition of Yamoja, they're going to have a much easier time picking their fights, separating it and choosing it themselves. They can use that ultimate to separate the team fight incredibly well, keep Cynosure zoned out if they decide to do it like that. I like Yamoja in of itself, and I like what it's going to be able to deal with on the enemy team. The pull is going to be incredibly potent. The healing and shielding is going to be a very good tool to deal with some of the dive potential that Obey has. Overall, I think it should be a higher value pick for this counter draft than Hercules would have been in of itself.
Yeah, I completely agree. We'll see exactly how this works out with the Yamoja as the game goes on. But it's got sustain in the kit. A couple of nerfs to Yamoja over a period of time have seen her viable, but not necessarily OP. At level 2, though, she's not going to have a whole lot she can really do there to contest, but it doesn't allow the oracles to get happen. However, it did expose CycloneSpin for a second, who eats a hammer from inbound, and a bit of lane pressure for Obey. In trade is the trade-off there. However, in this lane up against CycloneSpin, it looks like Wowie wants to be a bit more aggressive in this lane, because 2 games in a row, he's been on, what, the Hachi, and then before that it was the Jingwei, so it's a bit more passive from him. This time round, though, a lot more aggression.
Yeah, when you're playing Ullr, you're not looking to lose lane. You're not looking to lose lane on anybody, but Ullr in particular is a god that you draft for his exclusive pressure and his ability to have that solo kill potential. Once we see these supports start to rotate out and you see him move into that 3v3 in mid, I think Spark's going to start to fly in this long lane as Wowie's going to continually try and aggress on a CycloneSpin. And the matchup there is good. All the damage output that Ullr has is burst.
Yeah, good point. And now the trade-offs in this lane continues on. Speed buffs have spawned and been taken down by adapting. Looks like Sano's going to be a little bit late, going back to the Vermana once again in this game. Not so sure how this Vermana will do. It kind of struggled last game, but there's a bit of a different target option, I would say, this time round. It's going to be the Agni in the mid lane that he's going to be looking for, potentially. His inbound still a bit far forward here with low mana. A little bit risky to step this far up, but he's going to try and slow down this purple buff and try and deny it where possible. It did actually allow Wowie to get that whole purple camp on his own to make sure he's farming up there. As in mid lane, Big Man Tings on the Agni that honestly he was one of the first ones to bring back. Inbound though, why he's still here, I'm so worried for him because he's just hung around a little bit too long. Adapt is now rotating in with inbound sleep being down and at level 3. He just bit off more than he could chew. That cost him his shell. And you can see Radiance immediately go, you know what? We got enough there. We forced a free relic for absolutely no reason.
But it does create enough space for Wowie to get a slight level lead over there. He gets a wave to himself. He gets purple buff XP to himself. Bobby does his job there. He moves up, trying to slow down the farm and make sure that Wowie gets all that to himself. And it goes all right. Sacrificing your shell for that might not be the highest value, but worst case scenario, you just slow down your own engagement. You don't look to pick fights until that shell's back up.
See, I get your point there, Myth, but the problem is, right, you're trying to get an ult to level 5. Like, it's not like they get a huge ultimate, right? Like, they just continue to level up the first and third ability. It's not, no extra, like, real threat is going to come from that ultimate. It's not going to get CC immunity or something during that ult either. So I'm not sure it's really as worthwhile as it may have been if they had a different character there. You know what I mean?
I see what you're saying. Whether or not it's worth is going to come down to Wowie's individual play here. If you're going to put your eggs in the basket of putting him ahead, you're going to want this Ullr to leverage it incredibly well, and that's a god that can do it if he just gets those levels, gets the ability damage online from Bladed Arrow or Hail of Arrows. Then he can start to get that solo potential onto CycloneSpin. Slowing down the farm from CycloneSpin as well is going to be incredibly good. It zoned him off maybe 2 or 3 minions in the lane. You keep him from clearing out that purple buff nearly as efficiently, so that slows down Cyclone's ult coming online. Whether or not getting Ullr to 5, I don't think is the huge concern for Obey. It's just putting your ADC ahead in general.
Right. Okay, yeah, that makes more sense to me. I guess with the boots now fully stacked up too, and online is going to have a bit more movement speed in this lane. Oracles, though, going to go again to Radiance in this left-hand side, pretty much taken down there by Aurora with a bit of help, I would say, from Big Man in mid lane. But so far, looks like Cyno's getting aggressive for the first time. Purple rotation is coming up as inbound. Jumps on in towards Cyclone, but can't find the hammer this time round. Cyclone just a little bit too slippery for that. Purple buff is being looked at by Cyno at the same time as Aurora lost half his health. But a fear no evil and a good gank opportunity for Big Man rotating in two. Cyno's got his ultimate though off though and he's regenning, but it's not going to be enough to keep him alive. And now with inbound and Wowie both having to leave away from the River's Rebuke, that's the tail end of the engagement. Obey are on the run, but they're in no man's land at the moment in midfield. Inbound still under pressure, not going to be able to really escape. Here's the stun connects. Apple comes out and connects back onto Radiance, but it's 2 kills for Radiance off Obey's aggression.
Whew, Roar makes it out by the skin of his teeth there. Had that unruly magic landed on him, and he doesn't get that boost. That would have been a return kill for Obey. Cyno just gets caught unaware on that purple buff. That immediately gets ulted by adapting. Adapting, gonna deal all that damage in of itself. And then a Roar comes in to separate the fight with the ultimate. It's clean counter-engage from Radiance, identifying that Obey are looking to get a little bit frisky on their purple buff. Unfortunate. You're looking to play around your Uller because he's the one who's got the most fight potential on the map. Cyno rotates over, trying to make a play, and just gets caught out for it. I see where their head's at, but the execution is going to be a little bit cleaner if they want to try that again.
So now in the midfield, Inbound's kind of hanging around here looking for an opportunity to, well, strip someone away if possible or get a gank attempt onto a Roar. Bit of a trickier target to do it with, but he will at least help out Wolfie strip some farm from that middle area. As Wolfie now rotates back, he's going to recall back to base, more than likely. Next time online, maybe a Divine Ruin, just more pen. I'm not sure necessarily Divine's really that important, although I guess I didn't mention your Moja earlier, so some sustain reduction would definitely help.
Divine Ruin's just good in him. You got the flat pen on it, you got a decent amount of power, the anti-heal is going to be able to deal with some of the lifesteal as well as healing from the enemy team. There's almost no reason to not pick Divine Ruin. That was a cool hammer from inbound, be able to catch him immediately as he jumps out of the wall there. Not going to amount to quite much. Again, my eyes are going to be constantly glued towards these junglers. They're going to be the progenitors of all the aggression from either team. I don't imagine Obey are too keen on fighting without Cyno, and the exact same can be said of Radiance fighting without adapting.
Well, now again, Inbound being on the aggressive and just trying to abuse this early momentum that Obey tried to have, but the problem is that just Radiance found the answers early on. Benji, once again now on the right-hand side, we've not really spoke about the Jormungandr versus Kukulkan situation, but Benji's starting to do his roaming strategy once more to the backline, trying to slow down Cyno where he can, steal away some creeps just like that, and proxy farm a little bit more. And the difference is that Jormungandr can at least answer that back and do the same sort of thing. So far, though, these middle area of camps, it looks very even in terms of golden experience so far. Obey are actually up in gold here, Myth, even though they're down 2 kills.
It's all that solo farm that Bobby's allowing Wowie to have. He's been just sitting inside the enemy jungle playing incredibly aggressive.
Oh, good hammer from Inbound to make himself a bit of peel. But Cyclone used the right target to swoop to. He looked towards Wowie, so he's in a perfect position to collapse down on Inbound. And that's Inbound again with this aggression just being abused a little bit too much as Radiance pick him off in enemy territory. That was a really good ult from Chernobog. That was dope.
It was incredibly intelligent. He knew that's exactly where Bobby's trying to go. He's trying to get to his team for safety. So where are you going to go? Go to his team, cut him off. Bobby, it's time to stop, bud. You've been invading this purple nonstop, and it hasn't worked out just yet. Look elsewhere if you want to find the aggression. Move towards mid. Fight around your Discordia. Fight around Cyno. This purple buff invade hasn't worked out literally once for Obey this set. It's time to quit it. You're giving them too much of a lead. Now you're 0-2. You're 2 levels down on the enemy support. She's going to scale incredibly well into the late game, and it looks like he's already moving towards some more bruisery items out of the support, so defensive aura is going to come online for Radiance, whereas it won't for Obey. If you want to go aggressive, if you want to build damage, you're going to need XP, you're going to need levels to really do it, and right now Bobby isn't farming at all.
Yeah, we'll see what happens as this goes on, because again, though, Obey are in the gold lead. And I'm looking across the map, and it really is just the Tomakus, I guess, more than anything else. There's 5 Tomakus so far that have gone in the way of Ducky's pocket. When you think that's, what, 125 gold per team, every single one of those, that's where that gold's really come from. Wowie and Cyno, though, trying to steal away the purple again, keep Cyclone and Aurora at bay. level discrepancy, though. You can see Wowie has a 2-level lead over CycloneSpin with some of this aggression. So that is helping them out a little bit as they do look for that purple. But Radiance now committing to a Gold Fury. Inbound, wrapping around the back, spotted out immediately by the actual ward placed down. And a Fear No Evil will force Inbound's ultimate again. As he respawns, however, he'll be thinking about what he can do next. Meanwhile, Cyno, low on health, has to use his ultimate, but I don't think that ult's going to keep him topped up in time to find a kill onto Aurora. 2 kills, and with a Benji rotation and Cyclone swooping in, Wolfie could be next on the cards, and he will be. Now Wowie under pressure too, and Benji's healthy enough to keep that chase going. Nice little use of the beats to avoid the ultimate. The rotation now coming out from Ducky, as Radiance not even going to look at that Gold Fury, funny enough, just go back to farming again. 4 members almost of Obey died there.
Benji's rotation there is really the name of the game. Yes, Bobby gets caught out on the first part of that engagement, but Benji being able to move in there, force out the beads off Wowie, find the kills in the back line, and he moves in masterfully, builds up his rage in mid, transforms, then goes in for the fight. Ducky, nowhere to be seen, doesn't have any counter-engage potential there. Obey just lose out instantly. Radiance leaving up the Gold Fury means that they can try and force that exact same engagement again, and if they win it this time, more than likely they're going to take it. It's not often that I'm going to say not doing an objective is going to be worth it, but if you know you're able to take these engagements as consistently as Radiance has, might as well leave something up on the map that Obey is going to have to fight for.
Yeah, and the gold situation as well just went in Radiance's favor for the first time this game so far. That rotation out of Benji really paid off for himself as well individually with how things have gone elsewhere. Now, the situation is this Gold Fury could be under threat, but once again, Inbound still on stepping up past this midway point with Wowie 2, as now Benji with a level lead over Ducky, just Ducky evening that out for now. Looks like a collapse around the red buff is being looked at by Inbound. Cyno on the way too, but the ward coverage from Radiance is pretty solid to see this one coming, and Radiance seem to be well aware of a potential engage. So Obey have to back away for at least the time being.
They knew immediately. Bobby walks through that neutral ward objective through mid, so they group up around the red to make sure nothing goes bad there. Nice Fear No Evil, no engage return just yet. Wolfie's gonna make it out with a little bit of health. BMT.
Not going to live this one, no. We'll get a bomb onto Cyno. And I tell you what, the chunkster from Cyclone and adapting there, not a raw. I didn't mean to say it that way, but yeah, great work out from them to make sure they turn around the kill. Good apple from Wolfie, but he still ended up dying anyway. And with that, adapting going to go in the jungle, strip away a little bit more, and there's a lot of pressure now mounting towards this tier 1 in mid, and Gold Fury could be a bit more opportune. Adapting going to split the difference between tier 1 and tier 2, because he's looking for this red buff, and Inbound's here to defend. He's going to be careful. He just ended up using his leap over the wall. River's rebuke from Aurora. He's still giving some regeneration as the red buff is stripped away. Cyclone, meanwhile, dealing with Wowie on this left-hand side. That's a pretty good situation for Cyclone, and considering Cyclone was behind in this lane for quite a large majority. A few minutes ago, Wowie had a 2-level lead over Cyclone. It's not there anymore.
That's going to happen when Radiance have been playing as clinically and decisively as they have been, taking every single engagement. 8-1 is the global slash line right now, 13 minutes in. The gold lead, not too bad, only about 2,000 in favor of Radiance. Obey are going to have to do something to stem the bleeding, find some safer engagements, stop going towards this purple buff. Again, these engagements aren't working out for them. They keep getting chased out, or they just die straight out on it. Instead, try and shift your aggression elsewhere. If Ducky's not able to match Benji's rotations, fight on that side of the map.
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised that we've seen Obey focus so much on the left-hand side. I feel they could have swung to the right instead, maybe try and put a bit of pressure onto Benji, but at this point in time, 30 minutes in, it's not really that important to look at solo when you've got the Gold Fury under threat. Bombs raining down out by Big Man Tings. Good zone work from Aurora so far, and nobody in Obey was really aware of what was going on there. So nice opportunity for Radiance to extend their lead once more to around 4,000 gold.
My eyes are constantly towards Cynosure if I'm looking for Obey's comeback potential, but Wolfie's going to play equally a huge part in these fights. He's the only one that's who's been able to find this confirmed damage output.
Cyno, though, gets a hold of adapting for a second. Big Baby online, but look at the damage from Big Man Tings and Cyclone again. This squishy baby, and that's exactly what he is with this build, is not lasting long enough to find a kill at the moment. That's the 4th death for Cyno, though, in this game. And that's an awkward state of affairs, as Big Man in mid lane on this Agony is really raining havoc. Divine Ruin and Chronos Pendant 2. Those bombs are going to be up even more often. Cyclone for beads, though, to keep the box going against Wowie. And Wowie's not really enjoying that trade too much, although Cyclone on that dash into the wall didn't really get the angle he was after to continue the chase.
I wish I had a death breakdown for this game. How many of Obey's 9 deaths have been in Radiance's jungle? I would venture to guess at least 5 of them.
Quite a few. Wowie, though, in his own jungle, adapting, came around the back and picks him off as he was still trying to continue to farm up even though he's low on health. That's opened up a window now for CycloneSpin to get a tier 1 tower in mid. Meanwhile, Ducky got pressured in mid lane by Benji and Big Man Things enough to use his ult defensively. He's at half health here with Aurora rotating in. Inbound and Wolfie trying to help him out as much as they can. But now Rookie stepping up again. Focus towards Benji as the apple connects, but Benji's a tanky old dude in that mid lane, and the bombs from Big Man will peel him away. Benji very low as Adapting tried to secure the kill on Benji there. Wasn't needed. Don't worry, they're on the same team.
Benji ate literally every bit of damage that Obey Alliance had to offer and makes it out alive. That's insane. Now he knows, if I dive someone, it doesn't matter. I've ate literally everything they could do to me and I still make it out. So now if Radiance decide to take a fight, Benji's going to show absolutely no respect and immediately try and dive deep on a Wolfie, find Wowie in the backline, deal as much damage as he wants to, and he picks up the Urchin knowing that it's going to only make him tankier, it's only going to become better for him, that Radiance has been able to win every single grouped up engagement that's happened so far this game. Radiance is playing absolutely phenomenally around Obey's continued aggression.
With that dash force on Wolfie in the mid lane, that just gives Radiance a 3-member grouping to take down a tier 1 tower. Rotation now coming in from Obey a little bit late. Inbound at only level 9 here, 4-level differential between him and the support, and you cannot even stand and bang against an Agni when you're at that level. Benji, though, in the back line, looking for an opportunity, but got CC'd heavily to prevent an ultimate. Inbound, meanwhile, just trying to buy time, and instead elite another bomb. Fear no evil onto Cyno now, and Cyno's jumped to half health, has to use his ult defensively. Wolfie dropped down in the jungle as the carries of Obey were left alone as the tanks are focusing elsewhere and adapting. Wowie's also going to fall here momentarily to Benji. And this one is done. Put a fork in it, boys and girls. I don't see Obey getting back into this. It feels very much like the old state of affairs where they angered Adapting and the whole of Radiance stepped up. And now they're going to take a clean 2-1 with how this is looking. I just don't see a way for Obey to get back in this at 17 minutes. It's just been consistent abuse of every single lane.
Radiance throws away their clean play of the first 15 minutes of that engagement and just take every single fight that they can across the map. No one's looking out for any of their teammates, and they win it anyway with just pure raw aggression. I'm glad that you said you don't think Obey can make it back in, because I was trying really hard to stretch my mind into maybe word magicking some way Obey could find some sort of purchase in this game. And there really truly isn't any way.
I was going to say, that is the job, but there's times when you look at a game and go, yeah, this is almost impossible unless a miracle happens. And the way Radiance have played this so far, I mean, just look at what they did there. They had Inbound being pressured by Benji in mid, who was looking for a tier 2 there. Adapted had gone to the tier 2 in the left-hand side, and the rest of the team were taking a Fire Giant at pre-20 minutes. Yes, you heard me right, pre-20 minutes. It's 15-1 at this stage. And the composition that they've drafted, I mean, sure, the later this game goes on, they'll get better. But I don't think Radiance are going to let off the gas at all. Look at this Cyno, just trying to farm up, being chased out by 2 now. His options are limited on escape. Uses the ult to try and buy some time, but it's not buying enough at any stage whatsoever. All he's doing here is just playing Ring Around the Roses. The rest of his team, sure, they'll get a tier 1 tower, whatever.
Adapting, showing no respect there, just dropping the Fear No Evil, trying to confirm that kill for himself. Who needs it? You're 10,000 gold up, 18 minutes into the game. You've got the majority of the towers down. You're barreling down the lane. Cyno gets picked out instantly. You know exactly where all of Obey are. They're going for the cheeky base race play.
I was hoping.
Not at this point. They might have gone for a Phoenix there, but they think better of it.
I wanted them to go for a base race, if I'm honest, just because there's a game it'll end then and it'll relieve Obey of this situation. Because at the same time, I don't think they could really defend anyway with how this one's played out. I think this is where the situation for Obey turns and maybe Radiance too with how their season has developed. Obey adopting Cyno into the jungle, but they're still struggling here or there with some of their decision making in the game. Radiance slumping, but They needed to find a win here because this would have been an awkward one to really lose in my eyes from Radiance's point of view. So they're looking good for it right now as Benji now has to deal with 3. Let's see how many he can deal with and how many it takes to bring him down. Instead, he goes in on Wolfie. Wolfie with the apple, but look at Wolfie's health bar compared to Benji's in the 3-on-1. Wowie into the fray, but he eats damage from Benji again. And the man beast mountain that is Benji is still just dealing with all of them. Cyno, meanwhile, got out of the fray, and now the rest of Radiance turn up. Benji just finally die, but it costs Obey 3 lives. Middle lane is pushing with fire minions, and it looks like the right-hand side will have them spawning there too soon.
Benji takes on essentially a 1v4 for literally 25 seconds straight while Obey just get cleaned out on the backline. Cyno gets picked off, and then Radiant says, oh, hey, Benji's still fighting. Let's meet up with him there. Now 20 seconds left on Cyno's respawn, 10 on inbound. This might just be the game.
And if it is the game, it might be one of the quicker games of the year so far. Less than 22 minutes in this one, and it's looking towards the end. Although they're buying it off a bit more than they can chew. The hammer from inbound, he'll get the 3rd kill of the game, but the Titan will still fall.
Cyclone said he thought it was going to be a hard-fought 2-1. Maybe he was only talking about Game 1, because Game 3... Yeah. Clinical. I mean, nothing goes Obey's way. They continually aggress on the left side of the map, get crushed against the iron wall of defense that Radiance has, and then from there, what do they keep doing? Just bashing their heads into that wall around the purple buff, continually losing engagement. Stubborn play from Obey.
Completely agree, and I think a lot of what Obey can look back on in that last game specifically is how much they were trying to force a situation over and over again that wasn't working out for them. They were winning elsewhere on the map. We kept talking about the goal lead for Obey that all came through the solo lane, but they kept pressuring the other side of the map and losing engagements, and before long, it got out of control. 2-1 then to Radiance at the end of this one. Let's get back to the desk to break it down.
Thanks, Hindu. Out of control seems pretty fitting there. Obey had a single kill in this game prior to that Titan defense Fire Giant-esque fight. They got 2 by the end of it, but it's Benji in a 4v1 who finally gets taken down. It's a Titan defense at 20 minutes. Gore, I think Radiance have won up to their Game 2 performance, and now Game 3 is the cleanest they've looked this year.
Yeah, the questions we had about Radiance coming into this set, and maybe more so about Obey coming into the set, that was a resounding, I think exclamation point is the only way I can, think to word that one. A couple of kills coming through, 4 total for Obey is 1-1-1-1. And unfortunately, hey, they were saying you wanted to play through Wowie. He got 0. But CycloneSpin goes undying, Aurora goes undying. That's where a lot of the pressure starts. Benji and Adapting have a great game. Big Man Tings just does the same thing he did last game, except this time he does it on Agni. And realistically, it's just solid control. Once again, cycling from the solo lane, coming in from the jungle. And, man, it feels like from... I'll give them a few minutes, maybe minute 3, Obey were slowly falling behind.
I mean, I stopped taking notes after CycloneSpin got his 2nd or 3rd kill of the game because it was just Radiance pushing these small leads that they had and really blowing Obey out of the water. Now, I do need to levy the question, does this concern you about Obey? Like, was the pace that they were playing, the improvements we've seen on their game, I'm not sure that was sustainable. Maybe that's an overstatement. Maybe this is them kind of crashing back to earth, or maybe this is now kind of the outlier for Obey, this type of game. But I agree with something Hindu maybe lent at, is that it kind of feels like Obey of old after we'd seen them play some great games over their last 3 sets.
So there's so many questions I think that this loss opens up for Obey,
right,
but
too many.
The one that I stick to realistically is something that normally I like to see. For some teams, especially in a close loss, I like it when you stick to your guns. You're like, you know what, maybe it wasn't the gods we picked that were the problem, maybe it was something else. But I feel like what we saw yesterday when that Vamana worked in the jungle versus what we saw today kind of makes me wonder why you would, maybe return to that. There's just a couple of picks that lay left open as well, the Kakul and the Hunbats. If they're a big enough threat, there's something you have to look at. It just kind of feels like Obey stuck to, instead of adapting in the set, stuck to what they thought was best, which, hindsight is 20/20. It just feels like maybe they should adapt a little bit better in sets like these. I still think they have it, but they're going to have a lot to work on going into next week to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Well, it was Radiance who came into this set sort of feeling like they were in a slump, and I think now maybe that slump is over. Game 2 and 3 absolutely clean here for Radiance. Big man Tings, mid laner for Radiance, standing by to let us know if the slump is over or if there's more to build on.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to have Big Man Tings alongside me. BMT, first of all, let's just go back to that game 1. What went on, boys? Because, like, that comp, like, that was awful. I'll be real.
No, it wasn't great. As soon as the game 1 ended, we spoke about the comp, and there was a few things that went wrong. I don't particularly like the hell pick that we picked there into their comp, and with our playstyle that we had that game going into it, it wasn't the best. But after that game, we decided to change things up and just turn it up, I guess.
Could you give us a little bit of an insight? Because, like, here's the thing, right? You've been around a long time, too, and you've seen Adaption's teams. Normally, when they lose game 1, they normally bounce back with a vengeance, and it kind of felt that way again. Is there anything, like, is there a morale thing or a big talk that Adapting gives his players, you know, the guys alongside him, of like, hey, boys, it's time to go hard now? Like, what happens there, you know?
As soon as, like, nobody likes losing, right? And
Sure.
Adapting is obviously one of those that definitely doesn't like losing, as the rest of us. So it's just kind of like a step-up thing, you know? Like, everyone just voices their opinion and talks about what happened in that previous game, and we just reset the slate almost and just go into the game 2 and 3 as fresh as possible and just give it all.
Now, obviously, we've already had a little chat about, you know, we heard Cyclone earlier on talk about the slump that you guys have been in. Do you reckon this was a big one for you guys today? Was this an important victory to find? Do you think you're getting back towards your best now?
I'd like to say we're on the right path. We've definitely got a lot of work to do. Game 1 obviously didn't go so great. Obviously want to win 2-0 every time if possible, but I think we're on the right path. Game 2 and 3 definitely showed that how we can play when we're at our best, so hopefully we can keep that going.
Yeah, fantastic performance in that second and third game as well, respectively. Thanks so much for joining me today, big man. Good luck in the rest of Phase 1.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Good words there from Big Man Tings, and sort of answering the question that obviously Graham levied and I did as well. Room to grow, but obviously a return to maybe some of that aggressive, clean play style that we saw to start off this split. Expectations for you, Gore. Quick final thoughts maybe on this final set for Radiance moving forward. They're kind of in this tied for second place spot. SSG obviously have one less game played. Do you imagine they kind of keep pace with this top-of-the-table team?
This was the one that I think helps separate them from the rest of the pack, right? No longer tied for third, and, well, I mean, you've got 2 teams at 5 and 4, 2 teams at 4 and 6, trying to maybe hop over SSG and nip at the heels of rival right now is realistically what Radiance are looking for. Their eyes should only be on number 1, and they just showcase they have the level of play to make it work. They just have to start bringing it, you know, to every set instead of just those last 2 games.
Well, there's your Sunday schedule. Knights up against SSG, Sanguine against Rival. Rival have stood alone at the top of the standings after the last couple of days at 7 wins. If SSG win tomorrow and Rival lose, we'll have another tie at the top of the standings. So Gore, 2 sets tomorrow on Sunday that carry a lot of weight. Knights SSG, Sanguine Rival, and I think 2 sets, hard to call. That seems to be the theme here. I think both are going to be a lot of fun to watch.
I'm going to give a little bit of credit, though, and this is something that I think is going to be the conversation over the next couple of weeks, but Sanguine has had one issue the last little bit, a lot of losses these last ones, much like Radiance, and a lot of it has been around predictability. You know, Nika even said, I think the other day, that they were kind of the meta team. They only play the meta, so I want to know what they can do tomorrow to adapt that, to make it so that they aren't getting, you know, the only team right now to have lost to Obey, and instead go back towards that number 1 spot that we saw them take a little bit earlier on in the season.
Lots to build on for all of these teams. This Saturday SPL action was an absolute blast, but unfortunately that's all we've got for you here today. So on behalf of myself, Gore Miser, everyone back in production, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for more SPL.